Bloody hell, man. Running late today. Whew. Okay, well, I'm going to introduce you to a weirdy beauty. This is Martin's Telecaster. Kind of might have been a Squire. Who knows? Affinity? No. Possibly. No, I don't think Affinity would have been a full size. Standard series might have been full size body, but Affinity wasn't. So this is an Affinity neck on an older body by the looks of it, and the body's got a beautiful sort of urine coloured stained, but the top has been sanded off to reveal a lighter colour, which has a really nice sort of dual colour finish. Anyway, so this thing's got some EMGs in there, which I presume they're active, which means somewhere in there must be some batteries or something inaccessible, and it's come for a refret, a complete sort of setup and renew. So what I'm going to do with this, just give you a sort of quick close-up looks. What I'm going to do is I am going to refret it with some wire, which I've got there, about the same gauge wire, fairly tall and thin, and then we're going to we need to shim the neck. We're going to put on some new brass saddles and some short things. You can see these are right down on the stops, and they are only just about playable. So this needs a shim, and we need to get new saddles on there. But it's got a lovely punk vibe to it. Neck pocket crack, you name it, through body stringing, don't quite line up, you know. Who knows what this body was, but I'm going to, tonight, Matthew, what am I going to do? I'm going to take it apart in front of your very eyes. And you can see from here, I'm going to point you down a bit, stick your lens back on. This is late, it's 10:30 already. Gosh, I've got more to do still, so I probably won't get out of here till 11, but that's good. So, at no point doing anything other than pulling the strings and everything off this. So the tuners are stiff as hell and they're horrible, so we're going to replace them with some what do they call them? Christ, they're horrible. We're going to replace them with some string, split post ones, classic split post ones. So we might have to fill some old holes. These are cheapies, so they got diagonal screws, but they are really stiff. So that's consistent with an Affinity neck. These cheap tuners. Gosh, I don't like this. We'll put on a different kind of string tree. Unfortunately the Squire is wearing off. So I don't know why. Has it been? Was it a Squire? I mean, there's not a lot left on this decal, so who knows what it is. Doesn't really matter. That's not important. We're going to take this and we're going to sort of redo it, but we want to keep the punk ethos. We don't want to make it look pretty, although it needs new frets and it needs new tuners and stuff. We want to make it work, but keep it looking mucky. So this, in a way, there's not an awful lot to sort of take off right now, other than, if I can get the bits out, it's a nice rosewood neck on there, good old-fashioned style. Like I say, I don't remember the Affinities coming with full thickness bodies, so this could be something else. Let's see. So what I want to do tonight is I do want to pull the frets tonight. Now there's usually a lot of discussion about okay, no shims in there or anything. Doesn't really tell me much, some numbers, but it says 1997. Yeah, okay, 1997, 8th month, 19th to the 8th, so 19th of August. Is that today? No, 2 days after that. If I'd have just taken this part a couple of days ago, that would have been a spooky timing. But anyway, so this neck was made quite a few years ago, 1997. I'll pull this away. Yeah, nice old thing. So I think some split post tuners on this will work a lot better, because these are grinding to hell and back at the moment. So we shall lose them. I think we might actually still just work with the same ferrules. Might not have to knock those out. But we probably ought to fill these little holes here. So refret and then a full setup, but keeping it looking like it ever did. But I do want to have a look under the covers, because I want to figure out where the whether these are powered. I presume they're powered speakers. Powered speakers. You know what I mean? It's late active pickups. And that one doesn't want to come out for some reason. That one does. Righty-ho. No, we don't really. I don't want to tidy that up or anything, so we'll leave that right where it is. I'm going to have a look and see whether this it's willing to come out, or whether it's massively glued in. Got a feeling it's probably glued in. Okay, now when it comes to frets, what do we got? Yeah, the neck's fairly good. What we're going to want is, where have they all gone? Where have the hex keys all gone? Okay, here's one. Yeah, so we're going to want to make sure it's nice and flat before we do anything. Is this some other sized hex key that I don't know about? I keep getting surprised by these weird things. Oh, the fifth, that one dropped down here. Hold on. Bang. Yes, it is a bleeding 5mm one. Okay, so that's a complete slack. Yeah, a little bit of a curve on it. Straighten it out. So, okay, the argument is, people say, they do say, if you're going to remove frets, a good idea would be to put a load of back bow into the neck. And this sort of only just about works, so it's not what I would call a lot of back bow, but it's some. Okay, so our replacement tuners, everything lives down here. Our replacement tuners are going to go across a different direction. So it's going to go like that. Obviously that anyway up, sorry. So are we going to see the bad tuners? We may just get away without seeing them at all. And then that sticks through there. Doable. Yeah. I mean, they're slightly different. There are some slightly different ferrules, but these are quite, these are grime and everything is built up around these, so it probably makes just more sense to use those. So I'm not going to change that. Okay, so there are those who insist that in order to remove frets, you need to heat the fingerboard. Some say you need to wet the fingerboard, so we can do both. If I get a wet cloth, a warm wet cloth. There you go. A bit of warm wet cloth for you. Now I've got to get a soldering iron up into the game. Now the problem I've got, no, it's not really a problem actually. Can I get this? Does this come off there? No. So if I use the soldering iron over here, I'm going to have to balance it somewhere. And it probably won't reach either. Okay, so where am I going to balance it to that's going to be usable? I know, we'll use that like that. That'll do. So let's while we're at it, let's have a look under this thing here. See what we've got. I'm trying to think if it is active, where the okay, maybe it's not active. Maybe they're just standard passive EMGs. Oh no, there is a 9-volt battery hiding in there. Very cool. Okay, look at this. So, okay, that is that. Fine. Good. We'll come back to that. That's not what I'm after right now. We've got some lovely brass saddles to replace that with. That's all good. That's a tad rugged. You know, the thing is, I could tidy that up, but that sort of defeats the object with this thing. Isn't it all about the punk style-y? Right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bit more water on. I'm going to get a cloth thingy for wiping thingy. I'm going to get a thingy for pressing down thingy. A bit of foam. Put it over there like that. Hold that there like that. Yeah. Put that there like that. Zoom in like that. Sort of. Now, what I'm doing is wetting it all up, wetting it all up. We've got as much back bow in the neck as I can get. Unfortunately, we can't get any more. There's my soldering iron there that's hot. And my next thing I want to do is I'm going to use my my new old-fashioned new method of getting the frets to move, and I'm going to do that by getting the blade under there and twisting. Now, for those of you who kind of think about how to get frets out of things, you'll notice that that doesn't want to come out at all. That's just splintered. So that one's kind of tight at that end. See if I can persuade it to come up the other end. That is really... Oh, there we go. So I just want to get a little bit of lift. That's the aim. So I'm digging it into the grease and goo and looking to just get the thing started. And doing that, in my experience, gives me a little bit of a head start. So when I come to extend my soldering iron, which doesn't quite reach, and I will put a bit of heat on everything. Everything starts to kind of steam up under there, and then I try and work my way across with a bit of heat going through everything. The idea is that the bit of heat encourages the fingerboard to give up the fret without any flaking. Now, I've never been 100% convinced that it actually does that, so I'm just doing this for convention's sake. And really, the only way you can ever do a direct test really is to do half a fretboard without the water and the heat and the back bow and just try it as it comes. My feeling has always been that if it's going to pull up flakes, it's going to pull up flakes almost whether you like it or not, or regardless of how you try and treat it. But I could be wrong. But you know, it's one of those things you come to an opinion after many years of doing stuff. So for example, there are flakes coming up here that I'm sort of biting back into position, but they want to come up, and there's, you know, I put water on, I put heat on. And what else I can do? I don't know really. crunch. See that bit's coming up there. Now I'm going to need to re-radius this a little bit. Now, the problem with necks, and I've been in this position a few times, is if I don't re-radius this, if I don't re-radius it, I don't have really any control over whether it has bumps or whatever. So if I don't re-radius, I'm kind of, oops, this is the one I didn't get round to doing. I don't know what the state of the underlying seabed, if you like, on the fretboard is like. So I prefer to be able to radius it with a block so that I can know what what the condition is like when I come to refret. The difficulty about that, or the downside of that, is that it cleans up the fingerboard quite a bit, but I don't think that's too much of a problem. I mean, some people absolutely die for the kind of corrosion and the vintage mojo that sort of built into the fingerboard after years of playing, but other people aren't quite so attached to it. Otherwise I'll just be working with the edges of the fret slots and trying to clean those out in order to get a smooth surface to put the new frets on. So I'm trying to get the heat in there. Getting the first little bite going is really important. I used to do it with these pliers, but they used to put a compression mark on it. It was really annoying and it is destructive actually. So I actually worked out how to just take all the frets off all the way using just a blade, and it's quite effective. Although obviously it doesn't let you can't use the soldering iron with one hand and the blade with the other. So for some people it's not such a good idea. So I think once I've done this, that's going to be it for tonight. I'm going to have to finish Stuart's Strat tomorrow. And this is going to take place, this one I'm going to refret over a few days. Kind of mostly scheduled from Tuesday onwards. I've got quite a lot of other things to do, so it's not, I'm not waiting for any more bits or anything. I just wait until I've got a few things out of the way. So here we go. I mean, this thing about frets and protecting fingerboards and stuff, it's a bit like what I found in removing fretboards from necks. Some people seem to think that's, if your truss rod seizes, it seems to be a common idea that it's just absolutely straightforward to pull up, take off the fingerboard and chuck in a new truss rod and away you go. And it's really, really not that easy. Getting a truss rod separated from the underlying, yeah, that's what it does, from the underlying maple or mahogany is really difficult. It just doesn't want to do it. So you people think, oh, I've got a seized truss rod here, stick me a new one in, would you? If you've got a skunk stripe, of course, it's possible you can heat that up and loosen the glue if it's wood glue. And you might be able to dig out the skunk stripe and pull the truss rod out that way. That's hopeful. But if it's underneath the fingerboard and that's the only way you're going to get it out, then you may struggle. There we go, running along nicely. nicely. So I think to give this, since you're getting to fit new frets, then I think giving this a re-radius or a clean-up is a thing to do. A neck that's level and not bumpy and so on and has new frets is a good refresh for an old guitar like this. It's still going to look mean anyway, just by its very kind of stripped back nature. Like I say, I don't even want to tidy up the pickup cavity cutout on the scratch plate. I think it's great that it's kind of scraped with badly cut with a knife in a hurry to get a new pickup in. Sorry, you probably can't see anything at the moment. That's probably the worst view ever. So I've done as much as I can with water, steam, heat, and in a minute I'm going to be hanging this neck up and hanging the body up somewhere, putting the parts somewhere for safekeeping. Okay, you're off, you're staying there. So there we have it. I can't see. Oh, thank you, low power. Can't tell what it's looking at. Okay, well look, this is going to conk out on me now, so I think I'm just going to say that's it for tonight. I'm going to put all this in a box, but there we are, we've got going, and soon we're going to get to re-radius that. You can see it's all a bit grungy. A lot of that's just grime and stuff, but you know, you have to clean that up to make it smooth to get new frets on. Okay, thanks for watching. I'll quit now while I'm ahead. Well, I wasn't planning to do this, but since I'm here, I thought maybe I will. I've done a bit of a day off. Well, not a day off. Day off what I was intending to do, which was spraying and stuff, because I basically ended up rushing to meet the low humidity kind of window. And that's the problem when you're constrained by, when you don't have a humidity controlled environment for spraying, you end up racing to try and catch the weather. Now, or try and make the most of the weather. Now the problem with that is that it makes you rush and then you make mistakes. I make mistakes. So the whole thing I had planned of spraying Adams SG basically went out the window because in rushing to make the spray window I basically screwed up. But you know, I could have told myself I was going to, because it's almost inevitable. So I stopped basically. I just thought, right, that's it. And I took the day off and spent a lot of it in the hammock and some of it having a barbecue. Because it seems to me that when you've kind of gone down the wrong way down a track, it's a smart thing to kind of stop and reset. At least that's what I benefit from anyway. So that's what I did. Stopped and reset myself, and came up this evening. Took the whole day off really, and came back up this evening to the workshop and prioritised sanding back some of the mistake that I made yesterday on Adam's build. Basically, I did the thing that I know not to do, which is to mark up the position of the pickups and the bridge holes before the neck's fitted. So I went ahead and did that, even though I know it's a stupid mistake to make. And as a result, the through holes for the strings were in the wrong place, just slightly, but enough to cheese me off. So, and the I think the bridge was a millimetre out, so I restarted, basically filled all those holes, drilled them out and filled them all yesterday, and came back today and assessed what a mess it was, and it was a bit of a mess. But having done that, it's now ready, fixed, done, holes filled. Now I'm ready to put the bridge on and get it done again. Once the actual bridge is here, then I'll be able to make it work. So it'll all be. Any chance of being in focus, please? Can't see very well. So yeah, it's going to be. I'm going to reposition them, start again with the through holes and the bridge post. Okay, well that's my 180 grit sand down, and now what I'll do is take a bit of this and just take off the sharp edge of this, because it's not nice to get a razor blade. A little bit of rounding off. There we go. Okay, so what I'll do now is I'm just going to cut through. This isn't really a fret saw, but I'm just going to cut the end fills on this, so I can, when I come to refret, I will redo the end fills, or I might just make the metal go out to the all the way out, the fret tang go all the way out to the edge. But anyway, this razor saw is quite good for this little bit. So what I'm going to do after this is, I think I'll probably just cut the frets to length. I haven't got anywhere to put them because I've lent Rod my Gorilla Tape, which is my fret hanging thing. So I'd have to just I have to stick them somewhere. Stick them somewhere. I have got a piece here I could use for that. This I would have to do a little bit more scraping later when I come to fret this, but just right now this is getting it ready, re-radiusing it a little bit. So you know, it takes the original mojo of the neck away somewhat, that's no doubt about it, and for some people that's not brilliant, but you know, it kind of depends on whether you prefer the original look of it or whether you want a smooth level surface to fret onto. And to be quite honest, my priority is a smooth level surface to fret onto first and foremost, so hence why I will go for the you know, this thing, whatever it's called, re-radiusing. You know, because when you're committed to re-fretting something, you've got to get the frets seated. You know, it's down to me to make the frets seat well and to make sure that this new refret plays like a new neck. And so that's critical for me to be able to get the frets seated properly. So unless, you know, if somebody says very, very specifically, look, I don't do anything to the fingerboard, I want that vintage corrosion from years ago and so on, then I'll leave it like that and I'll work around it if you like, but I have to then say, you know, I can't guarantee that these frets are going to seat perfectly level, and which means I may have to, there's a risk of, or a slight chance of having to take more fret metal away in the in the leveling process. It's just how it goes, really. So anyway, so I'm going to get the vacuum cleaner, Henry I should say. Henry's going to come and do a bit of cleaning up on this workbench, because tomorrow I'm coming up and I'm going to get on with completing Stuart's setup on his Strat, and then his Tele ready for collection on Thursday. So the Strat was on hold while I what was it on hold while? Stainless 7.5. Okay. It was on hold while I got a switch for putting in a push switch. He wants a coil split. Okay, so I'm going to use, in a minute, I shall use this piece of stuff. The first thing I'm going to do is, while we're at it, then I can put this out of the way, I'm going to bend the new fret wire, and it's going to be, interestingly, this Affinity is a 12-inch radius. I also just took the nut out off camera, and it was really massively glued in. I had to cut it out, which isn't a problem, but there was so much grunge I had to scrape out of the slot. It took quite a while to clean that up. Okay, now I did buy myself some more fret cutters finally. Well, not finally. I bought a duplicate of the first ones I had, and in fact they broke, hence I bought some more, and I was a bit miffed when they broke, but to be fair, I'd had them about 8 years, so I went and found another type which I thought were highly recommended, and it turns out they broke within about 9 months. So 9 years or 9 months, not a good deal. Anyway, this Affinity neck is a 12-inch radius, which is a bit odd, but this fret wire happens to be 12-inch from the outset, which is pretty cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the wire with the new cutters. The first time I've used them, we'll try. I can cut them right in the middle place here. Where am I going to do it? Get my head around this. Right in the middle here. So, two pieces the same, and I'm going to start just using the first. So I guess they've cut it to a standard radius. Okay, so I don't know what you can see. Let's have a look. I wish I could see. Let's go. Should we zoom out a bit? No, I seem to be doing the colour now. Right, let's zoom out. Okay, so 12-inch radius, and I'm going to be cutting to the edge. So what I'm going to do is I've got plenty of fret wire. So what I think I'll do is I will just get this like this, and I will cut like that and go along. So hopefully I'll leave this in here. You can see I'm a bit mucky because I've been clearing up and I've been vacuuming and sanding as well. So this is the new wire. It's very similar to the original wire. So you can see I've got the neck on the edge here, so I can coil the fret wire around underneath. The difficulty in this is obviously making the cut and holding onto the fret, because it's not easy to do it with, hold it down with one finger. Anyway, so because I'm not short of wire, because I buy it in the meter, which means I can get a couple of meters, which will be more than enough for this one neck. It gives me the freedom to cut over length, and that means that I can trim back a little bit later without worrying. So you can see I've got plenty of wire. It's kind of convenient that the wires come radiused at 12 anyway, and the neck happens to be a 12, which it's not a sort of traditional Strat radius really, but it's square for you. Okay, so really I'm just getting this off, putting these frets off to one side so that I'm kind of ready to go. Sometimes I with the reed frets like this, you can either bevel right to the edge, so the metal comes, the tang comes right to the edge of the fret, sort of right to the edge of the fingerboard, or you can undercut and sorry, running out of strength. You can undercut and then you can fill in the little end gap. Now that's what a lot of manufacturers do, and certainly that's what you'd do if it was a bound neck anyway, because you'd have to kind of drop the tang inside the binding without, if you didn't want to destroy the binding. But actually I find the best refrets I've ever done really tend to be the ones that go, the tang goes right to the edge, which is much more vintage style anyway. So there's a new set of frets, and here's the leftover. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tie these two bits together and put them off to one side, but I'm going to write on here what this is, and who it came from, or whose guitar I bought it for, because that way I'll know to check back on it. And to be honest, I could go back and look at the number on my phone or something right now, but I'm going to call this Martin's Blue Tele Punk, which is what they're calling it. And let's go over here. Okay, so there's enough there for another neck like this, but it gives us also plenty of room in case something goes wrong and I need to take care of it. Now I've got a set of gold frets here which aren't full. It's not a complete set, which is a shame, because bit large size gold Evo is always good to have, but for some reason I'm short. I've got loads of different spare bits, but they're all different grades, different gauges, which is really annoying because none of them are the right gauge to complete that set. So I don't have a complete set, and I hate throwing them away, but anyway, so there's Martin's set of frets, which I'm going to put up here on the wall, and I'm going to write his name next to them so I know what's what. And then I'm going to tidy up Martin Tele 12-inch. Right, and I will bag these up and keep them somewhere else. You can see that Evo Gold, lovely heavy stuff, really good quality wire. Okay, well, I wasn't expecting to do that, but I thought that will make me feel a little bit up on the game for a minute, because at the moment, having taken about 6 hours straight backwards, I'm feeling a little bit demoralized. But now I've reclaimed it, so I'm back up on target, which is okay. So ready to go. I guess I'll see you. Well, tomorrow I'll be back for Stuart's Strat. We'll get onto back on this guitar. I've just lost me. Run out of magnets now. This ain't fair. That shouldn't be on one. That's up there. This can be over here. Something like that. Everything in its place. Okay, so that's this one. I'm going to put this one safely out of the way. That's ready to refret. We're going to leave it all old and knackered as well, which is fine. This can go over here next to its body. Ready to pick that up again on Thursday night, I think it is. So that can go in the bin. Okay, thanks for watching. See you shortly, in a blink of an eye almost. Ooh-wee. It's a warm evening, a summer's evening no less, and I'm here in the workshop lining up to fret this. Now, I have decided today, in this warmth, I'm short of a knife. I have decided, if I can find my knife, that I'm going to use super glue on this here job. So I'm going to have to work out which of my types of glue I prefer. So got the press over there. I've got me a I better see this for a minute. I've got me a, just put that down on there for a second, and pull me down. Right, I've got me a bungee rubber, just going to pull down onto here. Let's see if I can reach it. It's actually not tall enough, long enough, possibly, maybe. Let's try the longer one. I think that might be too long now. Maybe I'll double it over. So the idea, that's a bit wimpy. It's different from in the old shed, you see. In the old shed, I had it all set up for the right amount of pull, push, pull, force. So I should get it. Let's just try shoving this. Sorry about the video a minute. The view is a bit rubbish. So we've got 2 bits here. That's now probably too little. Let's try pulling from there to there. That's a bit naff too. Naff too. Ow. Come along now. It's either too long or too small. Well, it's kind of, I suppose it will probably do. No, oh, I see. Okay. Oh, maybe that's one way of doing it. Right, anyway. Okay. Sorry, back to where we were. I've got to work with the old thing. Mirror, to see what the heck I'm doing today. So we've got various different kinds of glue. Now, the thing with using super glue is you have to scrape clean. Right, ultimately, that's how you end up doing. I found that a thicker glue is better for this. Now, the plus of using a super glue is that it gives you a pull right down. You know, it'll hold down any little loose bits of the fret. So it's about the only way to give you a full old grip. So there's my glued fret. There it is in the slot. I'm going to whiz across. I have no idea if you can see this. I'm going to whiz across to here. Put this straight. Can't get it straight because my rubber thing's in the way. Darn it. Get it on here and push it home. And then theoretically pull it down. Maybe I need a second. Oh, maybe this will do. Look at that. I think that will do if it doesn't shoot me in the head. So what I then have is I have the fret sort of on, a bit all over the place, and I can get a bit of a clean up going in there, and I can also have it squeeze down, make sure it's in the right place. And then if I get a different kind of tool, this will do. Zip to the other side. Sorry about the view, I didn't really plan it very well. Get to the other side and scrape the excess off. Now, okay, that's my gripping, holding down thingy, and then I can let that go to there, pull that back over there, and it locks. That's quite cool. Now, what I'm going to do right now is just look at the fit of this. That's what I really care about right now, and it fits pretty well. If I'm in the mood, what I can also do is get me a pair of cutters, and if I'm really feeling like tidying up, I can start straight as I need to go on and just cut this back nice and clean, and that will leave me very little to end bevel. So I don't know how well you can see that without a permanently in place mirror. I keep having to guess. So what you end up with in this sort of situation is a fret with some glue kind of up over it, but that's no problem at all. This glue will come off, and it'll certainly come off with the sanding part of things. And then what you've also got is a little bit of glue sticking out onto the fingerboard, and actually my experience is you can either try and soak it off or move it with I used to use, what do you call that stuff, debonder, but actually in many ways it's probably easier just to use a blade to do a scrape up to the edge of the fret, and you can kind of come in from both sides. Now this takes a little while obviously, but it's a very easy way to clean up on a rosewood fingerboard. Of course you wouldn't want to try and do this on a maple one because you'll be scraping the finish. So that gives you a pretty good clean up. And if you see a bit of dark glue material still there, you can just lightly scrape to clear it away. Now the benefits, that's the clean side, I don't know how well you can see that. The benefits of that is that it's ready to end bevel now. I obviously have to do both sides, scraping both sides, but it's close to ready. We could get all these on, as long as they're all going on the right way, then we're in sort of all set basically. Now, this is the bit that's annoying me slightly. Let's move that. Yeah, we're in good shape then to end bevel in the same day. Now, if this was if I was using tight bond glue, then I would ideally leave it set overnight. And if it was maple board, I almost certainly would be using, if I was going to use glue, I'd be using tight bond. So, you know, it gives you, the super glue gives you advantages. A disadvantage, he says, whizzing over here to try and zoom in. Sorry if you can't see this, I don't really have a lot of alternatives or choice with the focusing of the camera. Get it on, get it on. Oh, look, that's an interesting thing. I've got quite a lot of leverage here, he said. Wow, I didn't expect that to happen. Ba, ba, ba. See what you can see. Oh, sorry. Can we have it? Yes. I've actually got an interesting, weird configuration. I guess I'll leave it there now, because at least I know that's in shot, and I will take off the excess and then come back and do another one. It will be obviously out of view until we come back to this place now, this aspect. So I'm just use a piece of kitchen roll to try and remove any excess glue, and it won't remove that much, you know, because the glue sort of spreads out. But if you thin it out a bit, it helps, and I tend to just chuck that on the floor until later. So I let this go. Oh yeah, lift this up. Whoops. Actually, I quite like that. So the first thing I'm going to do, I don't know whether you can see it or not, I'm just going to check the seating of this. It looks good. That's my main concern. If it doesn't seat well, it's not going on. It'll get pulled out, and that's what you've got to be ruthless enough to do. Now this I've chosen on this guitar because it's a vintage old thing. I've chosen to run the fret metal right to the edge, so the tang is going to be flush with the edge, which is I kind of remember it being a bit like that when I got my first Squire, and some of the early Fenders I think looked like that. Anyway, it sort of fits the punk ethos of this. I think the overhang cutting and end filling is a bit too fussy for this guitar. Okay, I think I've got my little clamping thing really on the ball. Push it under, line it up with the fret, give it a squeeze, pull it out, hook it on. Oh yes, amazing how things come together. Now probably it's almost better to use a flat thing here. That's not really working very well to clean this up. Anyway, so I've just had Stuart come up to pick up his Fender Stratocaster and his Chris Shiflett Tele, and the Chris Shiflett Tele is going back to the to Fender actually, and the reason it's going back is primarily because it's got a massive buzz, and I had a very good look at it yesterday and I couldn't locate where the buzz was coming from, and the problem with that is, for all I know, it could be one false pot out of several, and we don't know. So it's just a bit of a no-hoper if you start trying to diagnose something without knowing, you know, where there are so many variables that could be wrong. And since I didn't begin with putting them in myself, I don't know what they've done. You know, I tried to be practical. We could have spent some time reflowing the solder on all of the joints in there, but even then I wouldn't know. It may still not work, in which case we spent, you know, a half hour doing some soldering. God, that's so easy to use. I like it. Simple things, eh? Let's see if this will pull out the spill. Yeah, quite well. Yeah, so yeah, no matter, the problem is when you've got a piece of wiring on which numerous variables could be wrong, it's a bit of a hiding to nothing to be trying to diagnose it. It makes, in my view, it makes more sense either to, if it's under warranty, which it was, send it back to the manufacturer, or if you can't, then start from scratch and redo it, and take the opportunity to fit some, and better components and so on. This is going on very well. It's looking good. Feels very straightforward, and everything's seating well. So yeah, so that's going back to Fender, but so the guitar he's really happy with is the Strat, which has now got a JB Junior in the bridge position, plus a push coil split switch, and it's a ton less noisy compared, or a ton quieter, even though it's single coils, compared to the Chris Shiflett Tele. And doing a bit of research, I did find one or two people complaining about the noisiness of the circuit on that guitar. Now, I mean, that's a couple of people complaining in forums about the noisiness is not in and of itself proof of a a kind of common design fault or a known issue, but it's still quite revealing. And when you look at the electrics on that thing, they are a little bit, I have to say, a bit cheap looking. So I would recommend redoing it if the if the warranty doesn't cover it, but I'm sure it will. Anyway, so now let's see, have a quick look. Whizzing along here, and sorry about the bad focus. Whizzing along here, and you can see the glue that still needs to be scraped, but that's a minor deal. I did say that I've tried in the past using superglue debonder, but actually it's just as easy to wait till the end and do a sort of scraping pass than it is to try and use a whole gallon of this, and you waste a ton of it and it doesn't really clear up everything. And the other thing, of course, is it puts the debonder into the gap, which you really don't want. And so when you look at the end pieces here, they're all bevel flush, nicely flush finished when we're done. Okay, so kind of wish I could always see what's going on here. Trying to think if I can focus on there and then zoom around. I doubt I can, but let's try it for fun. Just being able to see what's in the viewfinder helps. But it's not that bad considering it is only an iPhone after all. Anyway, I have interesting. Went to our village hall committee meeting last night. So I'm the parish council nominee to go to attend the village hall meetings, and they're very, they're kind of what you'd expect for a village hall meeting. They're, all the sort of little itsy bitsy things. Who's fixing this fence? Shall we put up a notice board about this? Is this event going ahead? Who's doing that? And it's great because it's it's good old fashioned nitty gritty of village life. But one of the things that came up last night, and I won't mention any names, but came up, our village has been given a gift of somebody's left or bequeathed money to build a games, multi-use games area for the village. And as first and foremost, it's amazing to be bequeathed a gift like that. Can we get a focus on there, please? So the village hall committee is in the process of putting that into motion and getting it built, and even that in itself is not a simple process. There's quite a lot of, not intrigue exactly, but there's a lot of stuff you've got to get sorted out and so on. But one of the things that struck me in the meeting that came up was there's also been an issue with a couple of lads from the village who we all know, and a little bit wayward, and done a bit of vandalism damage, and in the, I don't know what we can see now. So as part of the evening was spent discussing these lads and getting them to recommend or put right what they'd done, pay some money to put things right, or cover the extra on the insurance policy, the excess. Anyway, so like any village, we've got that problem that the youngsters might not respect public property, or common property, community property, shall we say. And so there's definitely that problem, which is no surprise. It's not bad compared to living in a big city. We've got everyone knows everyone, so we kind of know who it is, and it doesn't go long before they're hunted down, and some people get to have a chat with people's parents, and so on and so on. Anyway, but one of the things that came up in the discussion about this multi-user game area, sports area, it was how to prevent it, or chances of it being vandalized or misused, and it really kind of struck me that I wondered whether anyone had thought about looking wider outside of the village into the bigger world, and see if there were any sort of successful examples of, let's say, engaging younger people in such similar type projects. So how would you get people engaged in and give them a sense of ownership, maybe, or I can't even see what's going on there. Yeah, maybe, or maybe that's an assumption that sense of ownership stops people vandalizing things, but maybe it does. Maybe there are other answers. Anyway, I just thought it would be a useful thing to do, really. So I'm kind of interested in doing some whatever research I can do, i.e. Google, maybe some talking to people, phone calls, just to see if there are any other projects that have been done successfully. I mean, starting with my own experiences, the thing that strikes me is, whether we like it or not, we represent, a bunch of old sods, fuddy-duddies, and we're going to decide to put in front of, or in a public space, we're going to stick this thing that we've decided. I think there was some consultation with people, younger people, families, about what this might contain, but it was way back, and I think most people have probably forgotten it. But anyway, so eventually what will happen is this facility will appear, and it'll maybe get used, maybe it won't get as used as much as people would hope, and then who knows how the young people of the village, in the village at the time, will relate to it. It might be something that they use, or it might just be whoops, I'm going to switch sides. It might be something, what am I doing? It might be something that they just, we set it up thinking they want to play games and use it as intended, but for all I know, maybe they'll just go up there and smoke reefer, or stuff that I would have done, or got drunk in its shadows. Anyway, so I just was kind of interested to think about whether there were any good case studies of what gets people involved, because I think that the reason I thought about it is that when I was a kid, somebody's decision to put something somewhere, no matter how much they probably would have thought they were doing some great thing for me, the youngster, it still would have felt like a generation apart and wouldn't have had any connection to me. And the thing I've always been concerned about is that, when for a lot of perhaps bored youngsters or maybe disadvantaged youngsters, and I don't mean by that they don't have good phones or good telly, but I mean disadvantaged in that they might not have sometimes the best family start, or they might not have some great role models or whatever. But I just wondered whether why we would expect them to have any sense of ownership of something, because that's the nature of community stuff, isn't it? That we kind of expect all the people in the village to feel like, Christ, steady on, to feel like this is our beautiful village and our lovely playing field with our lovely games thing. Okay, now this is where it gets lower and the pull gets lesser, so I'm going to go like that. This is probably going to come flying off, shoot me in the head. So I got to thinking about how do you get young people, younger than me, to feel like they've got some stake in something, that they wouldn't want to trash, that they wouldn't want to treat badly because it was theirs, or they cared about it. It just had some feeling about it, any feeling, rather than it just being put there without any understanding. Anyway, I don't know the answer. I don't claim to know the answer, but I was definitely interested in, thinking about whether it's doable or not, or whether you just accept that, well, it's always going to be a sort of generation thing, and they're going to rip it up, you're going to put it out, they'll tear it up, we'll all wring our hands, and there will forever be the gap between us. I don't really know if that's the truth. So I just got to thinking about, what ways would you get people involved? And it occurred to me that, there's a lad who's done some vandalism, careless. He's an angry fella, but he's not altogether bad. He's just I think he's got, he's on the spectrum and struggles to relate to people and so on and so on. But I get, he's my neighbour. I get on all right with him. On one hand, they're trying to, expecting his mum. This thing is going to chop me in pieces. Kind of expecting his mum to find cash to, help settle this. And I guess the older people who came up with this, and punishment isn't the right word, but you know what I mean. This thing for him to put it better. I guess maybe in their world they imagined that he would be sent out to, wash cars or polish boots to make the money. But actually, what really happens is that the mum ends up paying it, and then the tensions rise because she can ill afford it, and now on top of their struggles anyway, because he's a growing teenager and hard to handle. Now on top of that, she's got more financial woes to worry about, and I just wonder how that doesn't make him responsible in any way. It just feeds into a terrible argument a lot of the time. Anyway, who knows the answer? But I was just wondering. I started to think he owes something, but he doesn't care about owing it because he doesn't feel it's part of him anyway, or he doesn't feel part of any village that's been wrong done to. And I just wondered if there was some way of using his inverted commas debt to the village as a start point for kind of helping him to maybe, I don't know, become a bit more responsible, take some more ownership, I guess. But maybe it would be a little bit difficult for people to except because in a way that might involve, in my mad world, that might involve saying, I tell you what, why don't you take charge of, pay back a little bit, not in money, but why don't you pay back by helping me, you, get some kids to learn some football skills or whatever, because he's pretty good at football. You know, something like that. And so say, look, that will equal paying back, you know, and you won't have to pay back 30 quid or whatever it was that each of the 3 children was decided to be in debt to the tune of. So I'm going to look into that. I've long wanted to do something. I kind of wished, a while back, I wished I could do something. I'd love to have one of those fix-it clubs that I could run and have kids come and enjoy the real satisfaction of putting something right that's otherwise going to go in the bin, you know. I just think it's one of the things I grew up loving, fixing things and making things better. It stayed with me, and that's pretty much what's behind Really Love Guitars as much as anything. So I just thought, you know, I'd love to do something like that, but of course that's not quite the same as this multi-activity games thing. But anyway, but I'd like to do something like that, because there was a moment I was in my garden the other day listening to this young kid next door, aged 17, screaming into his Xbox with his inverted commas pals, his virtual pals, screaming kind of the usual teenage obscenities at each other, loud as anything, echoing down the street. And then upstairs in his room, my stepson doing the same with his older bunch of people, but in fact no different really. And I just thought, you know, that's what we're up against, getting them out of the virtual world and into doing something that makes a tangible difference. So I'm going to have a think and see if I can do something constructive. But it feels to me like if you're going to start with it, why not start with the people you already have on your radar, who are the ones who are evidently disrespecting communal stuff for whatever reason, and how about find out what reason, and find out what doesn't motivate them and what does. I don't mean treat them, you know, pussyfooting around them, but just be smart and be interested, you know, figure out what it is that, if anything, why it doesn't mean anything to them, you know. Like there was a problem as well that got a lovely rural village, and this at the top of the village near the hall, by the village hall, there's a fabulous big field, sports field as well. So, you know, it's good for events, football matches and so on and so forth. And unfortunately, part of the covenant or whatever they call it, the funding to have the field, and there's a kind of council rules that go with it and whatever. And one of the rules is dogs aren't allowed to run loose on it. And it's a simple health and safety thing about dog shit and toxoplasm, blah, 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 whatever, you know, nasty stuff. And kind of sensible. So I was listening to because I'm not really in that group most of the time. I'm just new to it. And I was listening to them discussing how, you know, they'd spotted people with dogs, so they went on Facebook and said, anyone walking dogs, please be aware that you're not supposed to, blah, blah, blah. And then there were some people thinking about, you know, are there clear enough signs saying that? And apparently there are some signs, you know, in small print saying, you're not allowed to walk your dogs on here, danger of fouling and so on. But, you know, in the space of this little meeting that I was at, obviously I was listening to, I didn't know things like the requirements not to have dogs, and I didn't know it was part of a sort of an obligation that the village hall committee, you know, has to agree to in order to have the, I don't know, whatever, the license to run the field or whatever it is. But, you know, so during the course of the meeting I was learning a bit of stuff about that, and it just occurred to me, once again that the people who take the dogs up there, you know, are desperate to walk their dogs somewhere. They don't really know anywhere else. They probably walk them up the road a bit on the hard tarmac, and then they come to the first bit of open field, and they, you know, which clearly doesn't have sheep or anything they can hurt, and they just let the dogs go. But what they don't know is they don't. There's nothing there that tells them the why. It just says dogs are not permitted on the field, in very small letters. And I just thought, well, why is that meaningful to somebody who doesn't know the rules or the mechanicals, you know, mechanical whys and wherefores behind it? They only know what they know, a limited amount of information about what's permissible and what isn't, and why those rules are there. And there's no sort of, there's no signage, or the signage doesn't attempt to, oh Christ almighty, I keep doing this, I'm just going to take my fingers off. The signage doesn't sort of bring them in, you know, it doesn't include them, or pull them in to an explanation of why, to give them any motivation to be part of protecting that. So if they knew why dogs were not allowed to be walked on there, then it might be, oh, okay, I'm playing a part in retaining this lovely field for my nephews, kids, grandchildren, whatever, to play footy on, and I get why. It's not people being, you know, fuddy-duddies, it's the council, blah, 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 you know, will withdraw the license to have it, and it will be sold to a farmer otherwise, or whatever the fate would be. Anyway, just the point being is I just thought that maybe we miss a trick to help people find the rules in some way or other meaningful, because at the moment it probably isn't. It's just a rule. And I think that, I don't know, I kind of think that probably applies to those kids doing their bit of careless vandalism. Because I don't think for a minute they're going up against the system and trying to smash it. They think they're bored and they're careless, and it doesn't mean anything to them, so they get some pleasure out of smashing some holes or setting fire to something or whatever. You know, and maybe some more cynical people than me would come back and say, listen, they'd set fire to their own homes, doesn't matter whether they own it or not. They're like that. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't, I don't know. Who knows? But I don't know. I just get the feeling that when stuff doesn't mean anything, then why would you take care of it or respect it? You know, the idea that the older generations always seem to have is that you respect it because that's the convention, or that's what's expected of you. You should respect communal property. But if nobody understands why, they aren't going to. Anyway, so I thought I might be a self-appointed finder-outer about that. Not that other people may already not have done, or not that, you know, maybe there is no answer, I don't know. Just fancy having a look at it. Anyway, so this is going to be a fairly short evening up here. I'm going to do, what's the humidity, 61. I'm going to do another spray coat in a minute on some bodies out there if they're looking okay. If it's too much humidity, I wasn't really expecting to get a spray session in today anyway, so I've been a bit opportunistic, because I think today was always looking a bit over humid. Tomorrow and Saturday should in fact be a little bit better for spraying, so I might kind of just aim at that. But if I can get another coat in shortly, then I shall do so. And then I'm going to end bevel this, which I'll show you the end beveling process, and then I will probably off camera just put the radio on and scrape the overflowed super glue off until it's ready, and then it'll be a matter of fine-tuning the fret ends with files until we get down to, well, ready to reassemble and do a setup. They're almost always requires some fret leveling. It's nigh on impossible to just put a set of frets on like this and then to play. Occasionally it happens, about 1 in 25 to 30 times, I guess. So when it does happen, it's very surprising and pleasing, but it's rare, much rarer than it is common. And that's just because there are so many little variables in here, like the, how much you press them down, what the radius is, and how it matches the radius of the frets at that exact point, whether it's perfectly spot on or whether there's a little bit of mismatch, in which case the ends sometimes sit up a little bit. So there's all kinds of possible variations, really preventing it from being a straight up playable refret. But occasionally it just works perfectly and you hardly have to do anything. I get a feeling, my instinct tells me this is already starting out pretty good, so I think the amount of further leveling work will be kind of a minimal amount, which is good. Two more frets to go and then we'll be done. Now you can see, can you see? Yeah, you can see it. Not very good view when I take it away, but I'm sorry about that. Let's get these on, and then what I'll do is I'll take a zoom out shot and I will show you the edge beveling file at work. Yeah, it was a shame for John's Strat earlier on. A customer brought a Strat that had been refretted twice, and both times fairly badly by the looks of it. And it's one of those things that I have to be careful, because it's very easy to criticize somebody else's work. You know, it's all too easy to start behaving as if I've never made a mistake and screwed things up, which I certainly have. So, you know, the temptation to grandstand it when somebody else goes, oh, it's done this and it's awful, and you go, oh yeah. So I'm always try to be a bit humble and respectful of other people's work and the difficulty of the thing at hand. And so he had this neck, this Fender USA neck, refretted twice. The first time he got a refund, but I think it had messed it up somewhat. And the second time, the most recent time, still isn't right. And he didn't get money back from that one. So he's a couple of £100 in the wrong, in the hole, if you like. And really, while I could say to him, here's what I would do to it, basically I would pull the frets, I would re-radius the board because it's got some strange undulations in it, get rid of those. The finish has already been pulled off for no apparently good reason, but it's been the headstock is waxed and, sorry, the original lacquer, but the rest of the neck is oiled. So I would strip all of that off, re-oil it, re-poly it, and do a proper refinish, and a refret with a refinished board. So it would look kind of new again. But there's also a problem that it may be that the truss rod doesn't work. So that might require a step further, taking out the skunk stripe at the back and removing the truss rod and replacing it. So it's quite a lot of work, and feel sorry for him that he's already, in the hole financially. So everything would be a kind of worse, an extra hit if he goes any further. But anyway, I've left it as an option that I'd be happy to do it, and I said that I would do the refinish for free, just to try and take the sting out of his having had some bad luck. Right, so I'm just going to bring you back up here for a minute and just take the guitar body back over here out the way. Now, just going to create a bit of space. So while there's sawdust and music and love and romance, I will, let's have a look. Right, I will do the work on here because it's already mucky, and then I'll clean up afterwards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a couple of clamps, and I'm just going to do this edge beveling, and then I'm going to shift off and do another spray before it gets too late. Right, so I'm going to hold down the headstock at this end with a big clamp to about there, and I'm going to put a clamp about here if I can get it to stay. Now this one is just really to stop the board moving sideways. That wants to hold it down, so it's now nice and tight. And then I do is I get my dangerous edge beveling file. So first thing I'm going to do now is I'm just going to run it along here at a slight angle, and the aim is to just take off any large burrs, and you can see it's here and see it's running quite smoothly to begin with, so that's not so bad. Now the biggest risk of doing this end beveling thing is the file skipping up and dragging this edge over the frets, because that will just grind the hell out of our brand new frets, and that will guarantee that I have to do fret leveling even if I could have got away without it. So the important thing is to get a lot of downward pressure on this, more than sideways, so it can't skip up. And you have to really focus what you're doing, or focus on what you're doing. And it's when you take your attention off it for a second that it sometimes goes wrong. So you can probably see by now that it's starting to, we're close to the flush of this edge here. And it will cut up the finish if there is any poly on the side of here, but I think it's actually been worn off by now. So what I do want to do is I want it to run right to the edge, so I'm going totally vertical at this point. Again, still pressing down to ensure that it doesn't skip up and over. So that's given me a flush with the wood. That's pretty much spot on. Now that's left the edge of the frets slightly almost vertical now. So what we do now is just bring it in at an angle, again keeping this pressure on it at all times. And now I'm doing about a 30-degree angle. Now this is freehand. There isn't a calibration for fixing the block, so it only cuts at 30 degrees and no more. It sort of moves about a bit. You can see it's quite involves quite physical pushing. Okay, so now we've got flush edge, and we've got, oh, it's not 45, it's about 25-30 degrees. Depending on how much room there is for the strings. If you've got loads of room, you can afford to allow it to go over to a 45-degree angle. I'll probably keep it back a little bit from that, but not too far. I don't want it too steep. Okay, that looks pretty good. Feels pretty good. So that's a nice quick business. Lovely. Now we turn it round, swap over ends. This one goes down this end here, and then a stop, and if we can turn this a little bit to the side, then I can get in here close enough. Okay, so again, concentrate on the vertical, or the slightly off vertical, just trimming the edges very lightly until it smooths out and we can start moving quicker and putting more force into it. At this end you have to be careful not to run this block further up onto here, so it's even better if, for example, we can get this foam just there to catch this, so if I run into it, it's going to hit that. Okay, now I'm going to concentrate on totally vertical. Okay, that's all beautifully flush vertically. And now I'm going to roll it over into a bit more of an angle. Obviously it actually gets harder down at the thicker end because it's got more metal to cut per square inch or per inch of travel. Muscle cramps. Now I find that if I get tired like this, or get achy because I've put loads of shoulder into it, it's about now that I'm liable to make a mistake and end up going down the side. So it makes more sense to take a break, recover for a few seconds, move around, do something, anything else. Don't go straight back into the sort of pushing at it until you had a little bit of a breather, and then come back at it. Okay, I think that's it. Lovely refretted neck, looks good. Now, let's have a look. Yeah, all good, all level. Delightful. Let's just check one more thing on this side. Just make sure the middle is cut right, because it looked like it had a little bit of a bow outwards, but that's not really to do with this edge beveling. That might just be the way the neck's shaped. Okay, I think that will do. Right, that's that for now. So close up before we hit the stop button. Ta-da! Sharply cut frets. Now they're going to need sanding to smooth them off. You can see that they're cut with a file, which is very flush and sharp, but they're sharp now on the faces because that edge beveling file that makes them very flush, but they're like blade edges, so along the top it feels sharp. But one of the best ways I found to overcome that is you get a piece of 240 grit and you take it like so, and we run up and down the faces. Now this is going to get rid of, first of all of the end beveling file scratches, and it rounds off the fret ends a little bit and it makes them look great, and they're kind of halfway ready for further polishing when you come to fret level, which we still will do. And then once you've done the edges, you can come in over the ends a little bit, so we're rolled over a little bit onto the frets themselves, and that softens everything up. So I'll show you these up close. Remember how it looked before. Now it's a little bit smoother. That's 240 grit scratches. Okay. What we could still do, probably, is hello, come back. Still running? Yeah, you are. What we could do as well is get another bit of this and just go over to the flush edge here a little bit, and just make sure that we catch the very edge of the metal on the tang. Again, all in the service of polishing this up, making it as smooth as it can possibly be. Okay, was that? Have I just done the opposite side? I haven't I? Right, what I meant to do was this side here first. Okay, well, I'll just chuck this over and do the same on that side. So then we've got the scraping of the super glue to do still. And once we've done that, we'll be ready for the reassembly. And, well, actually we could do a bit of fret end work as well. That's probably a good thing to do before we reassemble it. Okay, so that's a good start, and it's lost a lot of its sharpness now. These are kind of ready to start rounding off, and they look very nice and smooth. They don't have the sort of, they're a little bit rounded now, they're not quite as sharp and flat. And I would use these tools to make small adjustments. Let's see if you'll stay there. Where are we? Hello, finger. That fret there, right. So I would basically just round off each of the frets very slightly, like that. This concave tool. And I would go over this with sandpaper again as once we've levelled the frets, so this would round off again. But this is just to get rid of any little sharp tangs. I don't know what you can see now, I'm all over the place. I'll do that all the way across. And then off camera I will sit down and do the fingerboard scraping just to clean it up. I don't know where we are. Where are we? Near the end. Somewhere like that. Sorry, I've zoomed in too much. It's crap. So by the time I've finished doing these frets, I've usually run several bits of sandpaper over the ends, softening out the ends in stages. Some manufacturers produce guitars with frets that look like they are straight from the end beveling file, and somehow they get them so that they still aren't very sharp, and I can't quite know what machine or how, but this is sort of, I find this a long-winded but satisfying process to work this by hand. The more you work it, the less, I don't know what the word is, the less precise they look. When they're flat sanded and with a block or a edge file, they look precision leveled. You know, they have an incredible sort of precise look to them, but they are less comfortable to play because you've got little hooks on them, and I think the only way you really can get around that is by rounding them off by hand, as I'm doing here. And then when you do that, of course, they lose that precise laser beam cut edge. Everything gets a little bit rounded, but it all comes down to softness on the fingers, and there are several points on the fret end that can be sharp, so you have to really take care of all of them. And if you go back over this with a block of sandpaper, and you can make it look very sharp and precise again, but the problem is you reintroduce the sharp edges, which your fingers will then find them and not thank you for it. So I think I would rather sort of much more rounded, softer edges like that than machine finished looking things that hurt. to play, or that you can feel and you notice every time you play. It's not a good thing. Right, I'm going to stop in the end of this row, and then I'm going to go and do some spraying, and I'll see you when it's time to refit this neck and all the other components, and that's probably at this rate going to be tomorrow, and we'll get the setup done in full tomorrow, and this guitar will be ready to go back to Martin on Monday. There you go. I like it. Alright, thanks for watching. See you soon. Right, here we go. We are into the land of reassembling this punk Tele and getting it set up ready to go. So fret leveling, frets done yesterday, yet to level. I've reshaped the scratch plate a little bit. This one doesn't quite fit, or it didn't quite fit. Now it does. Ta-da! What we need to do is fill these holes and put some new holes in. So I'm just going to put you there. Not a bad view. And we'll get some little bits of this. Get some glue and some stuff. Great thing about gluing holes like this is that you don't really have to wait for them to do anything. You can kind of glue them and get on and make your new holes right next door, because it fills the holes more than anything. It's the glue isn't essential really, it's just kind of a holding thing. So I'm going to get me cutters. How many do we need? Well, really, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make some. These are a bit big, but the holes are currently too big for matchsticks, so we got a bit of a challenge. So I think what we need to do is sand these down a little bit. We'll see how much off the right size they are. This is going to be a bit wimpy, this sandpaper. We want something with a bit excuse me, a bit more bite to it. Okay, it's not ideal to have a loose bit of mist, loose bit of this stuff, but at least it allows me to fairly quickly scrape this down to a point, and then we can see how well it will fit. So it's a bit of a sharp, I think that's the way to do it. We'll tap that in, so it's a mixture of glue and a bit of pressure. Now my hammer lies over here. It's been a fun day so far, or fun afternoon. I've done quite a few other things, including some gold spraying, because the humidity right now is really low, relatively really low. But I also had some good quality time in the hammock as well, which I have no shame in confessing to. That's I guess when you choose your own lifestyle, that's the bit you get to do, choose how you do. And for me, having some time in the hammock during the daytime to enjoy the summer and the fresh air, to me that's an absolute, that's like going on holiday. That's my version of vacations. But hey, it's fairly inexpensive, so that's what I like about it. So what I'm doing is I'm just filling all these holes here for the time being, and really I'm just going to start off like this. Well, what I should do is put some glue on the end of the spike, and I'm going to hammer it in. Sorry, that wasn't supposed to happen. You should be alright still. Doink. First one in. So I'm just going to take each one of these and shave it to a point. So yeah, most of a lot of the hard work obviously done in the refret yesterday, and I'm pleased to say that it feels very good so far. So that should be a really simple fret leveling. That's what I'm hoping for anyway. Don't see any reason why not. Like I said while I was doing it, there's about a 1 in 25 chance of getting it right straight off the fret press. It's very, very unusual or uncommon to get it perfect, just because the clearances involved are so small, and you know, it's a mechanical process, which isn't not like precision science. Anyway, so I'm really looking forward to finishing this. I'm hoping it'll be tonight, actually, because then I've got the weekend free for some other things, make some progress as well on some other things, which is great. But if it's not tonight, then I'll still have time to finish over the weekend. But it's definitely going to be ready for Monday dispatch. That's the plan. And then I've got a few other things sort of starting off. Looking forward to one of them, hoping that Joe is going to bring down send or bring a vintage Avon Les Paul, those classic old made in Japan plywood things that I've done a couple of before, actually, in terms of refurbishing. So I've got most of the parts for that here, just ordered and arrived over the last day or so. I've got I've got a custom guitar to build for Vince, which is an unusual one in that it's actually, it's going to be the first, believe it or not, it's going to be the first neck I ever make from scratch. I've always been an upcycler of necks, but in this case I'm going to make this neck from scratch, and the reason I'm going to do it is because it's highly unusual. It's going to be the widest 6-string neck you've probably ever seen, and it's custom made for a chap with enormous hands, basically. So it's going to be a quite unusual thing. I've made a guitar for Vince in the past, and even though that was a 48mm spacing at the nut, over the years he's been playing it, it just still not turned out to be enough for his hands. Wow, that's what you get when you have 2 magnets. Pow. So yeah, it's going to be quite an enormous beast. I mean, the thing is, it's quite a challenge, because, you know, so Vince has come to me in the past and said, you know, I'm a newcomer, I haven't been able to play guitar before because the traditional guitars are too narrow at the nut, or string spacing is too close together. Now, so what you've got, and there's no offence to Vince, but what you've got as a guitar maker, you've got a newcomer to guitar playing who's telling you that they can't play a guitar because the strings are too close together. Now, so you have to say, okay, I hear that's what it feels like to you, and then you have to try and work out, unless you're with that person and you can see either the size of their hands or the way they play or whatever, you have to take their word for it, but try and find out, you know, if that's really the problem. Because I think it's okay, you know, it's their money and they can spend as much as they like getting to a place, you know, where they've got a guitar that works for them. But, you know, you don't want to send them on a wild goose chase if it isn't really to do with the size. So I've tried to be very careful and work out with Vince, not only, you know, is it really about hand size and string spacing, and one of the ways I've been able to sort of try and ascertain that is to send him a kind of a jig to try out some different string spacings, which I built from a brand new bass guitar, 5-string bass guitar neck, which I bought especially for the purpose. So that was quite interesting. So I sent that off to him, and he tried out the different spacings that I made possible with a series of different nuts on this, or spacer nuts I suppose they would call them, on this test rig, and he came back with the idea that 60 millimeters E to E at the nut was the right spacing for his hands. Now that's absolutely huge, right? Anyone will know, especially if you think about the fact that a standard Les Paul, I suppose, or a Strat, is about 35 millimeters E to E string spacing. So yeah, that's a hell of a lot. So taking him at his word, there we have it. Look at that, ready to redo. Okay, now what have we got? Oh yeah, we've got the screws here. Yeah, so I've based on that's what he said about the right size for his hands. I've then mocked up a full-size guitar based around that spacing, and have sent that to him in the post, or in a guitar box actually. So it's like a, I was going to say an air guitar, but it's a bit more substantial. It's a real cardboard cutout guitar. So I've sent that out to him to have a try out and see what he thinks. Right, let's get a whole bunch of new screws. Right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill some new fresh holes in there, and we're going to put in the oh, I haven't put this on charge, what a plonker. Yeah, I'm going to put some new screws in now, and we'll have a guide hole first. So let's just make sure it's where it needs to be, which is around about there. Hold still. Now I'm going to put a little extra bit of width on the pilot hole, because I don't want anything splitting anywhere. So that makes it gives the thing room, plenty of grip, but it stops it being quite as tight. Yeah, so anyway, I've sent off the cardboard cutout, inverted commas, air guitar, and so far, having sort of had a try out with it, or feel of it, Vince's take so far is that that's the right size for him, which is cool. So next thing to do is to begin the process of making the guitar, and I think I'll be able to fairly safely say that I'll have done as much as possible to make sure that this is what he needs, and that it doesn't come as a surprise. I think that's the worst thing. It's not going to be a cheap guitar by any means. It's a complete one-off custom. So, wow, okay. Why did that come flying off? Knobs, where have you gone, knobs? There it is. Okay. That wasn't exactly supposed to happen, but it just did. We need a screwdriver to put this back on. Yeah, anyway, so it's interesting. So he says he's quite happy with the way it's looking size-wise and everything. So I guess the next thing I'm going to do is typically we'll do a parts invoice on a guitar like that, and then we'll get going. And that's the sort of parts and materials invoice, I should say, and that's the kind of principal commitment. And then once a customer like Vince has paid for parts and materials, then we're on a go. And of course, it's possible. Let's say it doesn't. He decides he can't afford to complete it. Then I guess the way I tend to work it hasn't happened before. But if it were to happen, I would probably say realistically the parts are forfeit, and I won't charge for the work so far. That kind of thing, because I'll, in the sense that I can repurpose it and reuse it for making a guitar for someone else. Okay, but like I said, it's not happened before, so that's kind of. But if it's a lot of money, and if it doesn't work, or if it turns out somebody doesn't feel they can continue or afford to continue, then I guess you have to have a sensible out clause. Let me just look at my book a minute and see what we had down for this. I'm just going to double check about everything. Where have we got to? What we're looking for? We're looking for Martin. Okay. New tuners, 8-gauge strings, full setup tuners, refret. Yeah. Tuners, yeah. Fret wire, brass saddles, yes. Split post tuners, yes. Needs a shim, done. Refurb, done. Yeah. Blah blah. Right. Okay. That's cool. So here we have it. Next bit, as you can probably see, here's a bit I've been looking forward to quietly on my own. The brass saddles. I love these things. There are a few things in the world in this day and age that you feel good about paying lots of money for. That's not true, but this is one of them. This, my dear people, it's like sweets or something. That is 20 quid's worth of brass saddles. I mean, how beautiful is that? I mean, what a lovely thing. Now, are brass saddles any particularly better than those things there, whatever they're made of? Cast, chromed, blah blah. Well, not really, but you know what? They're far better looking, and we get to replace these grungy, worn out screws and stuff. So I think this is a very nice replacement to do. For £20 you get new springs, new screws, shorter grub screws, which is the other cool thing. And there we have it. Look at that, ready to go. I mean, how beautiful is that? So next thing after this, I've already made off camera, I already made the adjustable tusk nut. It was just seemed easier to do while I was listening to something on the radio. So that's sitting in the slot at the other end. I'll show you in a minute, but it's ready to go. So once I've replaced these and put the tuners on, then we'll be ready to load this up. Now I'm not even going to clean the plate because it's rusted, it's corroded, but that's part of the vibe of this. I didn't really want to make this thing look newer than it is. It's got this crudely sanded off front, which I think gives it a really nice pastel blue compared to the yellowing polyurethane finish that it's got. Now, as we were saying, I think the neck is an affinity neck, but I don't think this body is an affinity, because unless it's it might be a standard, a Squire Tele standard series, but the affinity I don't think was a full-size body ever. I could be wrong. There might have been some run of them that was, but I don't seem to recall them being full-size. But somebody will no doubt correct me. So look at this brass. These are from Northwest Guitars, and they do two kinds. Well, they supply two kinds, two versions. There's the 10.5 sized 10.5 millimeter width blocks, which are perfect for this guitar, which is a 52.5 spaced bridge, or they make a 10.8 millimeter sized saddle set, or each of them at 10.8 millimeters, which makes it a 54. Yeah. So the only thing you have to do is be careful you know which one is which, or you know which your bridge is first, so measure your your string spacing on the bridge. Okay, so look at these gorgeous looking things. These will tarnish and lose their shine very quickly, so they'll look like nicely aged things very quickly anyway. Why some people say, well, you're all for tusk nuts but not brass nuts. Why do you go brass saddles? Why not tusk saddles? Well, kind of, yes, could do, but they're very expensive, so maybe not. Right, so I'm putting all these spare bits in here. Here we go, and I'll put them in with all the frets and whatnot. So I'm going to do, I won't worry too much about the heights of the saddles just yet. We've got a little thingy here, hex key, and that's for the adjustable nut, which we'll see operating in a minute. So just what I'm going to do now is, see if I can make sure I can see what I'm saying. Yep, let's put the new tuners on. Now I decided to keep the original ferrules, and they're just because they're sort of look like it, you know, the original guitar, it sort of fits the style, and so they kind of work. So I don't think we should change it for any particular reason. Now what we do need to do with this is we're going to have to drill new holes, and that's going to require a little marking to make sure we don't overrun on depth and so on. So a little bit of marking first of all, just to make sure that the depth is safely avoided, we don't run into trouble. So there's a sort of maximum depth mark here. Then I will also give it a shot with slightly larger gauge bit, just to make sure that the, what do you call it, these things, screws, don't split the wood at all. So this one, there's the starting point. Now, just a thought, we've got here a bunch of ones technically probably could do with filling. The truth is, it's probably, if we look at the spacing doesn't quite, may not quite line up with these tuners. So that's interesting. They will. That's interesting. Wilkinson Deluxe. I won't know until I've put a screw in here, but I think these will just about hold in place. But it's an interesting one because they. There's my little marker pokery thing. It's interesting because they're not quite as close together, so the actual tuner spacing is just a little bit non-standard, which I find odd. Let's make a mark here. That's our second one. And let's just make a slightly wider hole, and then we'll see how they hold together. Now what we can do as well is fill the original holes if I want to, if I'm feeling in the mood, but again not massively all important. So let's get those two together there, and let's see how, first of all, this one goes in there, and then second of all, this one, the head of the screw needs to sort of align both bits here. My slight concern is that it's going to runs a risk of going through. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe we'll be all right. Let's mark the next one up. Okay. Mark the next one up. Let's see if we can do it. Yes, that's you can tell I'm finding this just a little bit unusual, because normally these vintage tuners sit closer together when you put them onto any guitar like this. So this is just slightly out of the ordinary, which has got me thinking, like, what? Let's see what happens now. Yeah, that's kind of odd. Never seen that before. It's sort of important that the screws do hold down. So the only way around this, if they don't, and that is holding, but this one doesn't want to for some reason. Let's push that down. Now will you hold? Yeah, just about. Yeah, it's just a fraction off. That's weird. Not quite what I'd expect. It's also making it slightly harder to align them perfectly straight, which is being slightly annoying too. Right. So when I put a slightly wider drill bit in, I tend to just do it for the top part of the hole so that it doesn't widen it all the way down, because we want the screw to bite. Okay, so that's my starter one, the low E. It's quite close to the edge, which reminds me of a bit of what you get with a Sun Mustang, which is a sort of slightly small scale Strat. That looks everything like a Strat until you come to replace the tuners and put on. If you ever try and put on Clouson vintage split post tuners like these, then what you get is this strange overhang. But that's just the way it is. This is just a little bit too far off for my liking. Sorry about this. Just about holding it, but you'd want it to be a bit better fit, really. I don't know if that's an affinity squire thing. I've not really experienced that being a problem before. Then again, it's not every day I upgrade these. So there they are, kind of as close to being in line as I can get, and a bit more tightening here. Okay, yep, there we have it. Alright, so now we have got, I'll put these away as well in the spares, some ferrules and some tuner screws. Get rid of that. These are for another job. Right, so now I've got me some sacrificial strings. So that's the next bit. Oh my goodness, catching caggy fisted for some reason. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these Harley Benton 9s. Although this guitar is going to get done with 8s, I don't have spare 8s to use as sacrificial strings, so I'm going to do it on 9s. Oh, fantastic! This one's I'm kidding myself. No, I thought it was missing a first string. I thought that's an absolute rip-off. The one I need most. No. Anyway, so I'm going to load these up through the string through department, and then we're going to get these set up. If I can just get this through here, come on. Ah, no, we've got something interesting going on here. What's wrong with the through hole on here? Somebody. Maybe this is another secret about this Telecaster, isn't it? For all I know, it could be an absolute mess going through the body, because it didn't want that high E to go through at all. Something's not right. Right. Okay, something I don't know about this. No, it does go through, but it's trying not to let this high E go through for some reason. Maybe it's because it's very slightly curved, that it's not playing ball. So that's crazy. That doesn't want to go through the hole. So I really now have got not much alternative. I might have to get one of those guide string shrink tubes out and try and guide it through that way. Wow, what the hell is... finally get it through. That's mad. Sorry. People, the idea of drilling a couple of ragged holes through the body of a guitar with a nice clean ferrule on either side sort of sounds like a good idea, or a bridge on one side and ferrule on the other. But of course what you forget is that most of the journey through the body is shaggy wood, and it's liable to catch. The string is quite happy to catch on everything as you go through, so especially with the high E, that was what it was doing. So now that G doesn't want to go through, look at that. Come on. Just doesn't want to go. Come on, please. Come on, come on. See, that's an unnecessary pain. Right, anyway. So what remains to be done now is I've shimmed the neck, because before that was the action was too high and we couldn't get the saddles down low enough. So having shimmed the neck with what tends to be my standard 0.25mm shim made out of a bit of tin right at the back of the neck heel, that should bring it up within the nice playability range, and that means we should be able to wind the saddles up a little bit, whereas before they were on the deck and they weren't even close to being an ideal action yet. So there we go. Let's get all the strings through. Let's get the packaging of these old Harley Benton strings out of the way. So yeah, so now it's time to load up the strings. I'm going to start with these Harley Benton strings. They don't have to get in the way because they're all coiled. I'm going to start with the D to hold the adjustable nut on. Now I want my adjustable nut to begin with the string sitting on the... Oh, I thought these were split post tuners. What's wrong with me? Why? No, they're not split post. They're Clousson style. That's okay. I thought they were split post. What is wrong with me? There's me thinking they were split post. They're just a more vintage or vintage looking tuner button, but they're a damn sight better than the ones that were on here, which were grindy. Yeah, so I do the G and the D first because I want them held down. I want them to hold the nut down. So once I've got this on and the nut set, then what I'll do is I'll make sure that the basic geometry works, and that for the shim I've put in, that it leaves the neck at the right height. If it's if the action now is too low, if I have to raise the saddles too high, then I've shimmed it too much. But it's a 0.25. It tends to be quite a standard shim size that I use, but it should be about right. Now this is sitting just above the first fret, which is a little bit... I like to, when I use an adjustable nut, I do like to have it starting off on the sitting on the first fret, but this is close enough not to want to worry. I'm not going to take the nut out and reduce it any further in size, although it could, but it's pretty good. All we care is that at its lowest on the grub screws, it is below the ideal first fret action, and as a result that I can then bring the nut action up, or bring the first fret action up using the adjustable nut. That's all I care about. So if it starts out higher than my target action, then I have to reduce the nut down some more. buzzing on the first fret, which is good, oddly. Now I'm also going to get me a string tree. I think I've got a load of spares just recently. I was just going through my accounts today. Oh my god, the amount I spend on spares is ridiculous. You know, my turnover, 95% of it, no, I mean a huge chunk of it, massive chunk of it is parts. Just so much money on parts. That's cool, you know, I'm not complaining because obviously I get enough business to keep me and the missus alive, so I am definitely not complaining. But it is incredible how much money goes on parts. Comes in, goes out on parts, or I spend first on parts, then get it back, and so on. So this is I'm going to use one of these Tusk string trees, and we'll use this one. I think the hole's already the right size, so I don't need to worry too much about any chance of splits. So it's a good sized pilot hole. Let me bring that down there. There we go. And keep the other one for another day. In fact, let's put a bit of... They're impossible things to store. Let's put that over there. I'll use it very soon. Yeah, there was a funny time where I don't know how, but somebody managed to put on, they put on Tusk string trees and Tusk adjustable nuts for the 3-a-side guitars. They were on at half price for a month or so. I don't think it was deliberate. I think maybe somebody got the pricing wrong, but so I jumped in and got myself as many as I could afford in one go. And it felt terrible having to buy them at full price the other day, I have to say. Okay, so there's going to be, when you come to, let me just open this out and zoom out size. So when I come to now set this guitar up basically for the first time, or get it into close to where I need the geometry of the whole thing to be, what I'll start with is a this adjuster here. So what I'm aiming for, oh, look at this. Now there's something. Didn't notice this the first time around. This is so badly off kilter. I mean, is this bridge actually in the wrong place? Well, technically, yes. Hellfire. That is quite crap. I think, blast, I didn't notice this. Why is that? I think because I had I think there was the neck was fixed in off center. I mean, I think I can do that for now, which is not fully ideal, but I don't like to have the neck being held under neck bolt loading. In other words, I'd much rather it sat with the heel against the straight edge fully with no air gaps. But the problem is, when we have something like this, it's clearly off or out of kilter, so it's actually going to require a kind of shimming of some kind. So I'm just going to, for a moment, just fit this in here. That's very good. I'm going to just push it. I've used a blade which is going to end up costing me my life. Yeah, that's off. That is terrible. Okay, so this is going to require the bridge moving. Looking at this, I don't want to crank a huge great shim in the side of here, which is what it's going to require to put this into any kind of decent playable shape. So the bridge is going to need moving, but I'll do that afterwards. So right now, you won't be able to see very well, sorry. Right now I put a very big shim in there just to keep it roughly in the workable position for now, but not happy with that. It's a terrible positioning. Now this could be a result of a very mismatched neck pocket meets original body, but I think the better idea is, as long as there's room in that pocket, I think this is going to require, without a doubt, this is going to require I mean, that's a huge shim. This is going to require moving the bridge. It could be, I mean, in a way you could move one end or the other, but anyway, I can worry about that afterwards. So that's just increased the complexity of the damn thing. So what I'm really bothered about now is just getting these up to a certain working height. So we expect these to be standing right up on their, mostly up on their hind legs, which is sort of the right idea. We don't want too much grub screws sticking out. So it's gone from having to be flat on the deck to now having to come up to a decent height, which is good. Look at this, it's so close to the edge. That's absolutely bonkers. You might say, why don't you, shouldn't you move the bridge first? Well, maybe not. Right, so that's the action for a moment at this end. Then I'm going to now raise the first fret action up at this end to clear the first fret, and that's cleared on the treble end anyway. Okay, now I'm going to put it under tune for the first time. Okay, this misaligned neck is making me feel unwell. Oh God, especially as there's a blade there ready to chop my fingers off. I'm being not very careful. So let me just see what we've got here. We've got a 12-inch radius, remember. We've got 1.5 there, and we've got, pow, next to nothing there. So we've got to bring this up. Probably similar to the bass string. 1-ish, tiny bit more, but not far off. A little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Yeah. Can't get it to go in there. Probably a little bit high on the A. Okay, down a little bit on there. Wow, it's just going to be one of those that goes all the way without needing. Whoa. Not bad. Not bad at all. No chokes. Brilliant. That is one of the good ones. Very flat as well. Okay. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to level this now, and then once I've leveled it, we'll take the strings off and we're going to remove this bridge if possible. That means checking the extent of the hole. In fact, we might, it's not good. This is not a good connection. I mean, it's not a good joint between these two things. This neck and the body, I didn't notice before, but it doesn't really work together very well. So I think we need to hoik this that way a little bit. It's okay for the pickups because they're pole-less. They won't mind. I mean, it's on full kind of shim at the moment and it's still not happy, so I need to get this across a good 2 millimeters more, and that's quite a big deal when you haven't got a lot of room either side. Okay, it's not the end of the world. It's doable. I'm assuming, providing there's a little bit of room in the cavity under there to move around. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark up the frets for leveling. Now the good thing about leveling is, even though this technically could get away without being leveled, it does have a little bit of what I call fret slap, which is a hint of the consequences of the frets being slightly uneven in places, which is microscopic, but it's enough to make a little zizzing sort of sound when you play all the way up certain strings. It's not limited to any one space or place, so it's not a single high fret or a low fret, although there probably are one or two in there anyway, because it's just factual, that's how it works. But what it means is that I should be able to clean up that, what I call fret slap, that slight woolliness of the note all the way up a single string, or more than one string. Clear up the fret slap at the same time as removing any glue that's on the top of the frets as well, which is another little added thing, but that's easy. And then I think this where the bridge is isn't really particularly relevant to this part, the fret leveling part of the game. So we've got a low action. We've got low action with what is effectively out of position bridge, but a very flat neck as well. Okay, I'll get it in tune one more time before I do the leveling, just to make sure. Can't see what you can see at the moment. Oops. Oh, what can you see? Right. Okay, so I'm going to do the leveling now, and then once I've done that, I'll stop and make a cup of tea or something, and I think, given let's see how it goes, but I might postpone the well, where's my damn, oh no, I've lost me hex key I need for this thing. What's that? That's my parallel axis pickup. I've got to use that in something. Right, I have temporarily lost the hex key I need. That's a pain. I'm going to have to go and find the right one. Where did I put that? Well, that will do. It's not perfect, but it'll do. Right, so fret leveling. Let's get on to it. So we're looking to calibrate the truss rod, and it's a little bit curved at the moment, so slacken it a tiny bit. It's good. Take these off, lay the string off at the end, spread it out there, get my finger out of the way. So no uneven frets particularly, so what I'm really looking for is just to let this do its usual thing, which is to just impose its curve onto this fingerboard, and to just very carefully ease up those little buzzy sounds. They're not far off there. I can see that it's cutting almost everywhere, which means everything's pretty level. There's a tiny high spot there and there, but nothing to worry about. So what I'm really looking for is, I know all the notes, individual notes play well, so the first thing I'm looking for when I do a bit of leveling and play is get rid of any avoid that bloody lethal. I don't know why I did that. If I cut myself on this, I've only myself to blame. Right, that one's good. I'm going to stop right there. Doesn't need any more. That's a good sign, a very pleasing sign of a good refret. I know I'm singing my own praises, but it is rare that they're that good straight off the bat. So I'm just now doing the B track, as I would call it. That goes across side to side from the E track to the B track, and just to over to the G. Again, everything's cutting very slightly, so nothing major out of line. So God, I really am going to, I've put that in a place I'm going to do myself a damage. Don't hold it there. Right, it's good. This is coming out fine. Now I'm expecting that fret slap will pick up a little bit as I go across into the bass strings, because that's where I heard it. So I was just recalibrating or checking the calibration there, and it happened to be still on. So now I'm going to again focus in the middle, because I'm not really suffering from any uneven frets, so I just want this curve to do its stuff on this more or less uneven neck. Now it's microscopically uneven, really. To the naked eye it looks pretty good. It looks like a very faint curve, but to the fret leveling beam it notices where it's slightly bumpy, and amazingly it is slightly bumpy. And then I'm going to say there's a hint of Ziz up there at 12 and 13, 14. So all I'm going to do is put that back on there and just do a little bit more and sort of focus my downward attention on 12, 13, 14. And lo and behold, that will be sorted to my satisfaction. Mind the blade. Yeah, like it. Now onto the D track. Now this is where it may be I'm picking up some pardon me, picking up some fret slap, so I wouldn't be surprised, but I'll be looking to hear it reduce now as I go through. Again, that's pretty well calibrated, I think. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the weird thing that this neck is so far and misaligned, and it's out of range of curing it with a shim. I don't like doing, like I said, I don't like doing shims on the sides either anyway, because I much prefer the security of having the wood of the heel against this side of the pocket. So any extreme shimming that pushes it the other way to make it line up is not good. But this is the result of it not being the original body. tiny bit on 12. Let's do a little fraction more around 12, just. And what I do when I'm in that mood is I turn my truss rod around. What a rebel! But somehow that works for me. Now I'll tell you why this is doing that, because 12 is slightly low at this point. Don't know why. It's fraction low, and that's what was at this low action. The lowness of 12 was making the next fret just fractionally high in comparison. Okay, that's the weird thing, is when you start leveling frets, you always think, you start out thinking of high frets until you realize that high frets and low frets they create the same problem. So actually what you find is they only have any meaning relative to each other, so it's only meaningful to say it's high relative to the next one in the sequence. So what you'll find is in a rack of frets, you might find the odd high one, and you'll see it being cut more than the others when you use the fret leveling tool like this. But what you'll also find, and these are more problematic, are one or two, often in a group together, one or two low ones. And the low ones, because they're low, they make the following one high. So it produces exactly the same problem as a high fret. It does exactly the same thing. And so you have to a tiny bit of zizz there. It's good. Down there. Yeah, so when you have a low fret, you're forced to bottom it out with the fret leveling technique. So you have to kind of take everything else around it gently down to its level. That's what I mean by bottoming it out. Otherwise, you'll still the next fret in the sequence will still be relatively high, which is no good because it has the same effect as a straight up high fret. So I should expect that to be okay now. Yep. And finally, calibrate one more time for the low E. Now it's going to be interesting once I take the strings off, because to move the bridge we probably have to take the strings off because of the fact that they're stringed through. It's very difficult to move things around while you've got strings poking through. But we also will need two of the strings again in a minute to realign the bridge, or to make sure the bridge is in position before we mark the new holes. So it's a bit of a on-off business. Okay, so now I'm doing the low E, and again just holding the truss rod in its nice fairly light grip, pressing in the center more than anywhere else, and just letting it hopefully map its curvature onto the underlying frets. Looks okay to me. There's a low one there. That is 12 is low. See, we knew that from before, but it is low. Now it's not massively low, but it's low enough to, at a low action, to cause the next fret to feel high. See? Actually, is it 13? Oh. So 12 is low and 13 is high. So the two things together are creating just a little tiny thing right there. So I'm going to turn around and I'm going to focus my attention on 12 and 13. All right, and it's going to be a matter of just gently bottoming out the unevenness between these two or three frets. So it's a sort of sharing out their unevenness together. Now that means one or other of the frets has to be worked on a little bit more to bottom out, but that's the price you have to pay. When you get there, you should find Okay, so 11 still needs a little bit of work. So I'm going to, this time, I'm going to recalibrate. So once I've done 2 runs at the same place, I tend to recalibrate just to make absolutely sure I've got the right shape in the truss rod. And if I haven't, if I've mistaken something and I've gone off, see, I'm a little bit over curved probably, and I just readjust it and go back until I'm pretty sure it's perfectly matched, and then I'll do one more round of leveling here, and I'm focusing on this one here, 12 and 13 really. Okay, I'm going to stop there. And let's check the action again. That's 1.5, so just going to do a little bit right on the edge, because I think this part of the problem with that now is that it's so close to the edge, it's playing right on the edge, which it technically ought not to be doing. So I'm just going to round these. Make sure these round off a little bit, because we are currently playing right on the edge. Okay, that's that. I'm not going to do any more. Okay. So, put the equipment away for the fret leveling. Hello there. Right, now this is the fun bit. I can, looking at this position here, I can see, I think the first thing I've got to do is, my problem is when I take the strings off, I won't have the strings as guides. So what I need to probably just do is just mark the edge where this currently sits. On this side. And we know, I would say we are where are we going? We need to come in I think we need to move probably need to move. I think it's about 1.5 mils. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's enough to put this out. So let's take off the strings first. Don't know what you can see, I haven't even been checking. Oh yes, good overall view. Right, so strings off. Hopefully we'll get to use these again just to do the checking of the bridge position, but I might have to take them out of the bridge first. Okay, so I'm also, no, I just realised that I shouldn't have done that measurement. 1.5 isn't accurate because I've already got a shim in there. So the problem is we've got all these horrible coily wires now getting in the way. I'm just going to undo this neck and get the shim out. Right, oops, sorry about that. Right, so I'm going to put this neck back in the way I want it to be. And then we'll briefly line up the two E's again and see just how far out we really are, because that previous measurement was with the shim in, and this is going to now get worse with the shim out. So, but that's at least it's a realistic measurement if I can get the string through. Okay, wow, that's off the edge. It's off the edge, mate. We know that's the line where that actually is, but we now know that this has to go. I think it's more than 1.5 now, isn't it, frankly? So this has to go. It's very difficult to keep anywhere in place. So this string, right, as set up, this string really has to go. I think it's 2. 2 would be barely enough, but it's 2 millimeters to one side that way. And what it means is, if I just can briefly borrow this high E string, be kind enough to untangle it. There's the E string. Yeah, look at that. So 2 millimeters in the other direction. We'll put that in a good place. Yep. So it's 2 millimeters in the wrong, the other way, and that's with the neck now comfortably locked. Okay. So the next thing we do is we come down here. We look at the bridge end of things. Maybe we zoom in a bit. Something like that. Sorry, just trying to get you a view of sorts. Now, obviously to move this we would need to fill the original holes. These feel a bit worn out anyway. They're very small screws, which isn't the end of the world, but now, technically speaking, the first question is, can we move 2 millimeters this way? Well, do you know what? I think we ever so possibly just sort of might be able to. But the problem with moving 2 millimeters this way, and what we can do, just if we really want to be sure, we can reattach one of these, both of these strings again. So bear with me when I just do that, just to make sure. It's funny, I didn't really notice at the beginning. I think I fairly quickly took the neck off, so I didn't notice how far misaligned this neck was, because had I noticed it I would have taken care of this as a first stage really. But never mind, it's not the end of the world. It just means I wasn't quite as close to finishing as I thought I was. Okay, so there's my 2 strings on as my guides. So the good thing is, if I get these suckers out of the way for a minute. Stay there. Okay, so I can, wow, so that's a bit tight. So pushing it sideways gives us a better, that's playable right at the extreme, but it's if anything it's probably not quite enough. So the next thing we can look at doing is slack these off or remove them. If we could give ourselves a tiny bit more room in that direction, we could go a little bit further. But that might require would require lifting this out and probably the problem with this, you see, this is a, oh, that's good, this is a EMG and the little metal bits up top. So the nice thing about the EMG is it lets us take that out. So the danger of this is if we move, oh, look, there's a broken off screw there. If we move sideways with this, we get a bit of extra room to move. Oh, there's two sheared off screws. Yeah, if we move sideways, but what happens is we have to widen these holes here, and then there's going to be a bit of hunting around because we're taking these through holes away slightly. Alright, I think for this we're going to have to take these, unfortunately take these strings out now, which is a pain because I have to kind of stretch them straight a bit. Unless I can yank them hard enough to straighten them, but that's not good because it tangles all the other ones up. So yeah, this is the problem with this partscaster, is that the neck and the body don't belong together, so they're not really they're not happily aligned. But if you want it to play properly, you're going to have to get the alignment right, and to get the alignment right means moving the bridge slightly, and to move the bridge means potentially a slight mismatch with the through holes, and if you mismatch the through holes, then potentially what happens is you can't get the strings through, which I have a feeling is partly what was going on before, because I was struggling to get them to go through. Still, let's take these out for now. So I've done the levelling, that's cool, that's out of the way. Ouch. Right, there's me strings. I hate these, I really do hate these Harley Benton strings. They tangle, they're in a sort of horrible coily, yeah, tied up mess. They just want to, the other strings don't do it, but these just kind of fall backwards into a coiled up hell, and they don't want you to coil them up and save them like this either. Maybe if I'm lucky. Okay, so I know I need to take this 2mm. Now the problem is, if you go that way, you can get a slightly different effect, but the problem is it's not really the same as moving the thing where it needs to go. So I think we're going to need to remove some of this material here as far as it goes down to there, but that's going to take into account we're working around the cavity that's already drilled there, so that's a bit of a pain. And we might just get away with it if we cut away sort of like just trying to work this out without having to remove all of the wiring, but you never know, you might just have to. So an extra millimetre or so off here. Now, get out of the way. When we go over to there, this becomes quite beautifully out of shape, so really that has to now become like that, at least, for it to look anything other than totally ridiculous. Well, that's okay, nothing will be in the wrong way, but the problem is going sideways now we lose the through holes almost completely, and the only way I can think of changing that is to widen these at the top, so there's room for the thing to come out and move around searching for the hole. But thank you, but that's a sort of a hopeful thing. But the only other alternative is to, you can't really reposition the entire through hole business because it's dependent on the other side. yeah, the problem with this neck is for this to align, that's got to be pushed out so far that way that it's got about a millimetre shim in there, which just would be, there isn't enough room for a start to do it. It physically wouldn't do it and still be attached. So what did I think? I think, what was it, 2 millimeters? 2 millimeters. I think if we open up the through holes a little bit, give them a chance to let the string come out, right? So kind of come out, and I'll go in with a slightly bigger drill bit here. So we want the strings to come out through the hole and have the room to come up and find the new, like that. There we go. Find the new exit hole. Okay. Where's my pokey thing? Oh, of course it won't go all the way through, will it? This will. Okay. So, then we move slightly over here. So that, we've got enough room. Let's just let's do that first, because that might be the restriction. So you see how nothing's simple? If it might be that you just get away without cutting this, that would be good. I'm hoping that it was the scratch plate that was stopping the thing more than anything else, but that would be, I'd be lucky if that was the case. So just hold on a second while I reduce this. Covered in bits of plastic as usual. Right, now it's not the right angle yet, the right corner yet, but we'll come back and adjust that later, or maybe in a minute. I'm wondering whether this might just allow me to move this enough as is. Okay, so we're still limited by that little bit there to, I guess, the centre of the hole being a centre of the hole, here. That really, at this point in time, without moving a bit of that wood, we are getting a maximum. What are we getting? Come on. 0, please. Centre of the hole to there. 180. It's not far off. I think we just need a tiny bit taking out down here. It'd probably even be better to do it with the Dremel rather than chiseling it, because it will make a cleaner cut. So I'm going to cut inwards a little bit in this space here, and I think I just want to make sure this is as out of the way as I possibly can get it. Well, it's not going to be very guaranteed with this tape, as it's not the strongest tape in the world, but that will do. clip the wires there. Let's see how that makes a difference. Guess who forgot to put the thing on? Oh yes, look at that, we got a half a mil extra. Now we're kind of, right, we're limited now because we run out of cover here on this side. So we've got enough room if we need to go that extra little bit. Like I say, if we go too far, we open up a little gap here, but that may be going to have to be the way this is. So that's enough. That's okay, I just skimmed the paper. So that's enough. Now we've got to fill these holes in the same way as we did before, with the same kind of stuff. So some more filler sticks. Pick up the scratch plate on the way back. I might just do a tiny little bit of adjustment on that. So we'll cut ourselves five little screws. Fills. Now what I don't know right off is when we've moved this aside, I don't know how effectively these things are going to find their way up through the through holes, but we really don't have much choice. Otherwise this thing is going to just be a horribly out of line thing from now on. So I'm just going to sharpen these all up. So yeah, this is what you get with a mismatch between neck and body that didn't start off being designed to work together. So this would never really have anything but the bass string hanging off the end, even with a large shim in the neck, which, as I say, is not a good place to be really. Fine, okay. Okay, so now we need some more glue. Haven't really checked the time. I don't know what time it is anymore. What time is it? 10 past 9. I've been here for ages. 5 hours. Good God. God, there are so many messed up, sheared off bolts and screws in here. It's hilarious. Okay, so same as before. I'll just put this off the stand while I do this. So just get the bit of glue on each one of these, tap them in. And then just chop them short and scrape them flat, and then that bit's done. This is always a nice quick process really. So a bit of tissue. Yeah, nice thing about using glue and sticks is that you can usually pretty much clean up while it's still wet, and then drill your new holes, and everything just kind of sets once you've done. And being wood glue, you can sort of clean it up very quickly like this. Oops, that didn't go the way I intended, nor did that. Missed the bin. Right, now let's just trim these back. God, bits of sheared off screw. I wonder what happened there. Right, okay. Now, my first concern is getting this in place and making the strings find their way through the through holes, because it's a bit pointless if we can't get that working. So there's my thing with plenty of movement, right? So we know there's 2 mils and a bit of the edge showing through. So let's do this. What I can't tell, there's the original position. So that's the straight edge, and if I go up from that, I keep that parallel. As parallel as I can do. So that could be the new holes, which is 2 millimeters away. Whoops, that one's moved, not good. Line them up again. Oh, that one's moved all over the place. Okay, forgot that. Okay, so that's moved. Okay, I've moved back a little bit. So, get me a ruler. Draw me a line, center. Okay. And that is slightly high. Okay. Right, so push that in there, move that over there. So it's a bit springy because that's the cables. Okay, I'm just wondering if I put that in place there, we are quite a way off the center line here. So it feels like it needs to lean a little bit this way, which really well, that's not the best thing. Not that one, not that one, missing that one. That's the challenging bit, is getting string up through there, but getting some, stretching the distance. Well, maybe that, I can see that's still over the hole. That's not over the hole, that is. I think we've got a limit to how far we can go, actually. I think I've pretty much described it. It's going to be if I can hold it down, I think it's going to be there. Now I need a pen. And it's moved. God damn. Get out of the way. Thank you. Fives. Okay. That's a line. That's good. That's interesting. Okay. Right, so this is our new start points. Did I tell you I was getting clumsy? I think I am. There's one. There's two. There's three. There's four. And that's five. Okay, let's commit ourselves to, these are not very large screws, are they? And it's soft wood. Let's give it a go. Okay, I'll do a little bit of widening at the top section. So it's really all depends on whether we can get the through strings through, if you get what I mean. Because if that struggles, well, it struggled before, but if it struggles even more, it's just going to be a pain. But that's the limit. Ultimately, the limitation really between this and, you know, putting this, changing the position of this. But it's the limitation really with using a mismatched neck and body. Let's see where we go. Please go in. Good. Right, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tighten these up a little bit, and I'm going to get a fresh 9 Harley Benton string and a fresh, well, fresh first and fresh last, I suppose, and see if we can get them through without too much grief, and then see where they line up first of all. Now I'm doing new ones because it's too much hassle to try and do it with a curly one. Yeah, look at that. I'm happy about that. In fact, that might even have been easier than the first time round, but you never know. But I won't assume anything. So 2 packets of Sacrificial Strings bit the dust in the making of this movie. Come on. Through you go. Now, going to find a way out. A little single hole, loads of room. Try and move around. Yay! Livable, withable. Well, that's a pleasant surprise. Now, let's get these through. You don't need to see this end. I'll just show you when I'm done. Through this end, under there. Okay, that's looking better. Mind you, that's upside down. Never mind, that's upside down, but that's. Don't worry about that for now. Don't care about that. I just care about the positioning right now. Okay, all right. I think we've solved the problem. Now, once I've tried these 2 strings out, okay, that's not brilliant on the bass side, but you know what? That's flat against there. You'll still be able to play it without it falling off the edge. It's not the best, but I don't want to move any further because we'd end up with a hole showing here, which would be crap. That is a million times. I don't know how well you can see that, but that is a ton better than it was. Oh, it doesn't look so good from there. Let's look at it. Let's look at it from my side. Okay, see that? That goes. There goes the little hex key. So that looks pretty close to the edge, but given that you tend to pull strings down anyway that way, and we could shim this a tiny little bit now, so watch this. I would be happier doing that. I started out with it under as tightly against the side of the pocket as possible. Now what I'm going to do is give it a little bit of a push. Okay, now that's okay. So that's slackened it off a bit now, and that tends to have evened things out a bit, which is good. Let's have a look at that. Oh yes, I like it. Do up, do up, do up, do up. Oh yeah. If I were to lean that up against there now, we are on. Look at that. That is fixed. Hurrah! 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 Now, all we've got to do is chuck that into there now. Maybe a little extra tidy on that curve there. They're all in place. That's good. Put all these in. I am happy with that. Ta-da. Now we only have to recrown the frets, polish everything out, blah 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 blah, all the tons of stuff. But the complicated bit is done, thankfully. Let's get these done up. Put this down on here. Let's see if another one would be a better option. Don't tell me that just broke the bloody screw. No. It jumped. It skipped. It's the wrong size. Slightly. Good. Okay. So you can see what's had to happen to make this work. Fair bit of faffing. Marvellous. All I would do with this is just put a slight corner into it, a slightly tighter corner, just bear with me. We are nearly there. It might be nearly there for today's hard-won victories. Tidy that up. Yeah, it's a bit better. So just basically tightening up the curve a little bit. Yes, hurrah! Let's get these in, get that bit out of the way. Little adjustments to everything really, to get it right, but it's getting there. So now I can take these strings off and I can go into the polishing out process. The sanding, the crowning, and then the sanding, then the polishing, which is sanding. We'll be done. Hurrah. That's groovy, man. 2 packs of strings used up in the making of this film. Okay, well, they're going to be good for nothing, so they are going to get the royal snip. And I do declare that next strings I shall put upon this beast will be the ones that make it play. And they will be, no, they won't be Darius, they'll be those things, 5s, 9s, 7s, 8s, that's the ones. Right, those strings can go over there. Right, just so before I finish tonight then, let us, I need to tidy up, but let us do, remembering the hex key is on the floor, there it is, I'll get it in a minute. Just going to now crown these frets and then get the fingerboard masked off, ready for sanding and polishing out, and that will be the most of it done, and then it'll be left to restring and make some final tweaks, but they really will be final tweaks. So we've got a medium-sized fret wire, if that, and what you can see there. Let's pay attention to the darn filming, shall you? Oops, don't switch it off. Right, a little bit of medium side. Here we go. So hardly any working on the first one, but a little bit more on the second one. So just basically taking off any flat edges and rendering the fret into a kind of arch shape, which is what it was before. Okay. Won't take long this bit, and then be a case of masking it all off, which I'll do off camera, like I'll also do the fret polishing and the sanding off camera too. So the next time I'll be back on will be to restring it, ready for the final hoedown. Woohoo! What you can see, that was just a careless grab of the camera there. Yeah, something about it. So not much crowning really at all. A couple of frets up here, a little bit more time, but you can see it's pretty smooth going. So when it's this quick, it shows you how little leveling's actually being done, which is always a satisfying sign, because it tells you your fretting was good, which is just as well, since these are sort of fairly medium frets. They're not exactly the tall or wide things, but there we are. Yeah, I mean, if you find yourself, sometimes you find yourself in a situation where you know, the frets need a lot of work. Maybe you got unlucky with the fretting, or the underlying wood was being difficult, and in which case you can find yourself struggling or worrying about running out of fret metal, or taking too much fret metal off to begin with. You know, since they're new frets, the last thing you really want to be doing is taking a ton of fret metal away. So I'm just now starting the old masking tape process, and this will allow me to polish out the frets without worrying. I think I'll do that tonight before I go, but it will be off camera. Then I can leave this hung up and worry about, or have the pleasure of restringing it tomorrow and oiling the board, because right now the board is unoiled. It's kind of as sanded, as re-radiused from earlier on in the process, if you remember. What I don't typically like to do is leave the masking tape on overnight too much, because sometimes it tends to stick more when you do that, and then it gets harder to remove and it's a bit of a pain. Especially if you've got, it's not the case on this one because all the finish has pretty much been removed, but on some guitars where you've got unstable finish underneath, the last thing you want to do is leave a load of masking tape on to get even more stuck to it, because by the time you come back and try and take it off, you might just find that it pulls all the finish off with it, which is not good. So haven't quite got round to, oh, what size bits I'm using the wrong size bits. What a fool. I got leftover bits from the last one, so I need to use the bigger bits first, like those. And that's that. No more large size bits. Dope. I do have some other size tape, but again it's a bit stickier and I try to avoid it where possible. So I will choose to do something like this first. Anyway, that's my Friday night. Such fun. Yes, keeps me out of trouble, I suppose you could say. Yeah, I don't think I have to stay too much later, because otherwise it's going to be too late when I get home. I haven't eaten anything, so then I'll be eating late into the night, and then that's not good for you. But anyway, so this is all just about protecting the fingerboard, because it won't like the sandpaper I'm going to use. I'm going to run through a whole series of grits from 400, which is the same as the stuff on the leveling beam, 400 grit to 600 to 1000 to 1500 and onwards, through the micromesh sets to 12,000, which is pretty much polished out by that time. So it's the same old process I've used for quite some years now. Usually I've just added a little bit of extra. I think I added the 400. I used to go straight onto the 600, but now I've added the intervening 400 stage as well, which kind of, I remember when I first started doing it, it adds this extra pain in the arse type of level stage. You know, it's boring enough, this next bit, with all the gauges of sandpaper, and it's kind of a bit aerobic and makes you hot and sweaty. But then to add another 2 bits of 400 in there on top of everything else feels just like, oh no, even longer. Even when I put the radio on it, it tends to still feel like a long time. Anywho, there we have it. That's the masking bit done. A bit to do on the back end here, which I tend to do in green frog tape normally, but I like to sort of cover up the edges just so I don't scrape the paintwork, although it would look pretty good on this guitar, I'm sure. Just traditional, keep it safe. There we go, that's my ready to go. Okay, I'm going to see you folks tomorrow. So here we have the final stage excuse me, of the refurb of this punk Telecaster. Now you might say, but it looks all dirty and horrible still. But that's the whole point. It's meant to look punk-tastic. So what I'm going to do now is put on some some oil. Find the right sort of rag to do it with. Yeah, let's put on some oil. Yeah, and then we're going to restring or string up with 8s, and then we're going to, who was that? Kids. Stretch them out, stretch the strings out, and give it a quick test. But it's the kind of thing that, because of everything I've done along the way, I don't expect any surprises at this stage, because I know the frets are level. I know the bridge is now in the right place. I have taken the neck off since I aligned it, so I may need to just loosen it and align it again once I've got the strings on. But that was because I was, what was I doing? I took it off to do the end gaps on the fret, so I filled those with what do they call it? So burn in sticks. Anyway, so those are all filled and they're very tidy, actually, I have to say. What we can do while we're at it is we can go down here on this, just give that a little bit of oil just to brighten that up a bit. Okay, so you can see the difference that the oil makes to the rosewood. Kind of, when we say, we kind of want to say it's hydrating. Well, maybe it is a bit. There's probably component is a lot of water in this. Mind you, oil and water don't mix, so who knows what's in it. I don't think it's just pure oil, but anyway. So it's not really hydrating, but it's certainly darkening the board, and as it will darken with fingers when you play it over the years. Okay, so I've taken the surface oil off. So now we've got, everything should be in the right place, looking as grungy and punktastic as it did in the past. Now we've got our 8 gauge strings, and we shall get these on. Now this is the test, really. How easy is it to get these through? Now, last time it wasn't so bad, so let's see, shall we? Oh, I've put new strap buttons on as well, and so they're going to be much stronger ones. They're larger strap buttons because the other ones were sort of worn out. So that was good. I'm going to complain about that. Straight-ish, through-ish. Kind of. This is hitting the edge of the tube, so it kind of often does that. You sort of expect it to want to go sideways, if anywhere. So that is just not doing anything I want it to do at all until I try again, and I'm sure it will. There you go, rethink. And I've. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. These are only balls. These go in pairs. They're not pairs. Sorry, they go in 3s. I caught myself out there. That's not what we want. Not like the Didarios, which are in pairs. The Ernie balls are in groups. Am I even in the right order? That's the, yep. Okay. A and B, G and E, sort of thing. So I'm just listening to, or have been listening to the radio and all that kind of crazy stuff where the radio punters are desperate to make this whole thing about Kabul and not being able to get the people, 1,000 or so of the Afghan people who should have British rights to leave, and they're absolutely desperate to make it because the bloke and his animals, you know. And it's like, wait a minute, it's got to do with the fact that the Taliban didn't want Afghans leaving, not that the British had a choice between human beings or animals. It's such a tabloid. I don't know. Yeah, just trying to make extremist sort of content ready so that people will argue about it, and I guess it gets the hits in, doesn't it? That's the tragedy. Right, there's a spare high E. Okay, so I'm going to start with my D string and the G string. Okay, so make sure the string through bit is through. Pull back 1 fret and tighten it up. Pull up the string as I come round. I'll restate how I do it, because this stringing is a fairly good way of getting the minimum amount of string on and keeping it tight and solid. So you pull it all the way through and then hold it over 1 fret and pull it back a fret's worth, and then start winding and hold the held string taut and let it keep the held string over the loose string as it comes round first time. Then, keeping the held string taut, pull up the loose string and push the held string below the loose string on the second time round. It might go a third time depending on how tight you pulled it, but that's what you want to do. Now the strings are in place and the nut is held down, and now we can just put on all the rest now without any risk of the nut flying off around the room, which it can do. So there we go. Hold this one up, let the loose one go under it, push it down, pull up the loose one and make the tight one go under the loose one on the second time round. And there's your lot. Take your eye out. So yeah, so it's kind of grotesque listening to this tabloid radio business. It seems to be precious little, well, there is a lot of radio choice, but it seems to be you either have Radio 4 type stuff here, upper middle class, middle-aged, middle to older aged English people, or you have sort of tabloid, click hungry, talk radio-y junk, or you get crappy music channels, some crappy music channels. I don't know. I used to like the talk radio aspect, but it is too click hungry, shock hungry. That's all it really cares about, is shock. Now, before I tighten these strings up completely, I just want to make sure, I'll have a quick look and make sure the strings are aligned. They may not be because I haven't tightened it up with that in mind. No, it needs a bit of a push still. That's okay. Yeah. Martin was asking in an email, you know, did I? He said he could tell from my descriptions. You know, this neck and this body clearly were not related. So he was saying, did I have any idea where from? And I'm not really sure. You know, and his question was the body perhaps, was it even a squire body? And I don't rightly know. So I'm just looking at this. It isn't bad actually, but I would like a little bit of move. Where do I want the move? I want the move away. Okay, so I'm just going to loosen off these bolts a minute. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it under a little bit of pressure outwards. Have a quick look. Okay, that's it. Tiny tap to get where I want it, and then do everything up. So that's what fender necks, well, you know, yeah, bolt-on necks, I suppose, were designed to do. You know, they were made so that you could move them around and align them, but it didn't really take into account when the two parts are so far so unrelated that you have to move the bridge to make it work. Okay, let's check. Oh. Right, this action must be rather low, so let's double check that. Okay. Oh yeah, that is on the deck. See, that's wound itself in over the time I've been handling this and doing the polishing out. So the vibration causes the grub screws to move, which is interesting. So that's way off where it was. So I'm going to have to obviously get all of the strings into the right place again, one by one. But that's okay. A small price to pay. Yes, it really has gone rattling. Ah, it's quite a way. Tons to do. That's all right though. We'll get there. You can, in a way, you can do it by eye at this point to get it approximately where you want it, because you can see the relationship of the strings. Sorry, the view isn't very good over there, I know. And this comes down a bit. Blimey. So worth doing all over again. Different tune, obviously. So, I've said a million times before on thousands of different videos that the secret to tuning stability is your two things. Think of it primarily as two things. First one is the condition and friction freeness of your nut and the slots. Think of that as half. Half the equation. And then think of the other half as being stretching all of the slack out of your strings at the start, like this. So you can see that here a bit of detuning. So that's the start point, but then I suggest you get the strings and you bend them to get the slack out of them, and that's a physical process of pushing them with thumb and forefinger until they're until all the slack is gone. As much slack as you can get rid of has gone away. Problem with eights is if I do it too roughly up on the high strings, I'm liable to break the E. And then I've got a spare E, thanks. Oh, these are rotor sound, aren't they? That's why they're in pairs, not only ball. Duh. But yeah, I've got a spare one thanks to rotor sounds generosity in putting a spare high E in. But then I've still got to stretch it out once I've put it in. So it's not a solution. You just have to stretch thoroughly but carefully. You can hear the change in how much that stretching detuned it. So you heard, well, you saw how much time we take to get the tusk adjustable nut set up and working. So the next, that's 50% of the tuning stability equation. And the next part is getting the slack out of your strings. We spend kind of 10-15 minutes doing that, basically until it doesn't detune any further. And so once that's done, we should notice it start to pretty much stay in tune and not detune. And certainly when we play it, it won't detune from about now onwards. You find the wound strings will detune the most anyway. Okay, with eights I tend not to bend them too much further, so I'm going to pretty much call it quits there on the stretching. Just want to show you something before I go any further. I'm really proud of these. I don't know how well the light's showing. Look at those fret ends. I'm a loving them. Filled and polished, right flat to the, if I can get it to focus, right flat to the the finish. If you can see, it's beautifully smooth. Oh well, kind of hard to focus. There you go. I don't know why this is just spinning around of its own free will. Anyway, beautifully edged, and I did it a certain way, so I had to do the end fills first. I started doing the polishing out, and then I realised I hadn't done the end fills, so I did the end fills with the paper on, sanded it back off to leave the end fills in place, then put new paper on. So it was 2 sets of paper it cost to get these looking like that, but actually I think that was ultimately worth it, because that's a very tidy looking arrangement, so I'm very proud of those. And you can't see any gap under there, because that's got the, well, you can see where it is, but just about, that's got the burn-in stick material, which is a little bit difficult to work with because it comes off in great blobs. It's not very restrained, I should say, but I don't really want to zoom. What am I doing? Zooming in on some Velcro. That's very cool. Yeah. So yeah, it's a bit blobby. You heat it with a soldering iron, and then before you know it, it's kind of running down the side, or it's a great big raindrop of it on the side of the thing. And because it is a nice solid material, it's actually quite hard to get off. So you have to work with sandpaper and get it down, and then finally you get to a place where you can fine sand it and it becomes flush and very nice. But again, like any sort of sanding of the edge, you always have to, you run the risk a little bit of, damaging the finish, or the clear finish on the edge. I'm just putting this under here just to support this out of the way. Now I just put these brass things on randomly. Don't really expect them to be intonated, but that one's showing up a little bit sharp, which means it wants to come away from the nut a little bit, and that's kind of what I'm seeing here anyway. It's a little bit too far along. Got it right. That's showing up as a bit sharp, so let's bring this one back, and this one back. really hard to make a string in an 8 set play the same note twice. It's very susceptible. This needs to come up a little bit anyway. So we've got to follow the radius as well as, well, that's basically what we've got to do, follow the radius. So a little bit higher on this one. Kind of almost, I sometimes find it easier to do it just by eye off there. That's 1.5. So that needs to come down a fraction because we need to be just heading off the 1.5 by this time. Good. Intonated. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. The well, just one thing, I'll just plug it in briefly. Yeah, kids playing out there. Plug it in briefly. Just have a little sound of it. And so I haven't done anything to the wiring on this. It is as it was. It's obviously putting out something because, well, it was when I first played it, and it's obviously doing something to the putting a signal out to the tuner. So let's just have a quick listen. Wow! It's got quite a pile of, yeah, some chunky output, for goodness. Yes. Children. playing great. It is. I'm not. What I do notice is quite a drop off in volume on the bridge, which is quite a lot lower. So I'm going to bring the bridge pickup upwards. Give it some extra beefiness. Yeah. Nice. Well, I'm happy with that. All good. All working well. There goes all my sanding paper. Yeah. Okay. Well, look. Refretted. Realigned in the right place. Everything playing well. Happy with that. Good. New strap buttons. New tuners. Yeah, all good. Job done. Right, this is going out on Monday up to Martin. I hope you'll enjoy it. All right, thanks for watching. See you soon.